Diego for a weekend series against the Pirates down at Petco Park. It's going to be Mitch Keller going for the Pirates and Nick Pivetta on the hill for the Padres. First pitch is set for 6:40. The Pacers will try and eliminate the Knicks tonight and move on to face OKC in the NBA Finals. Tip-off for Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals from Madison Square Garden is tonight at 5 o'clock. SDFC lost last night to Seattle 1-0. The team's next match is Saturday night at Snapdragon versus Austin FC. You can hear that match with coverage beginning at 7 p.m. right here on your home for San Diego FC, San Diego Sports 760. The first phase of the new Terminal 1 at San Diego International Airport opens this fall. In addition to the new airport experience, the roads around the airport are changing. Please pay attention to roadway signage and drive safely.
Getting you all set for that drive home. Let's just start the show. Here's Jon and Jim.
All right, San Diego and Southern California, what's going on? This is hour one of Jon and Jim with you until 6 p.m. once again here tonight without Jim, who is still celebrating his 1-year anniversary in Hawaii. How much blame does he get for yesterday? We'll get into, because we basically blame him for everything, whether they're winning or losing or life is good or like he gets blame. He rarely gets credit. He typically gets blame, and that's even when he's here. So like we're consistent with that. So we'll get into that coming up in a moment.
We need like some I blame Jim shirts.
100%. Work on that, Marshall, or Sammy, or Brent, or Jim. We have a really good show in store for you today. Mike Faren is a great voice in all things Major League Baseball, MLB Network Radio. He'll join us at 3 p.m. He's actually getting ready to call, I think, a regional for the Road to Omaha College Baseball, but he's going to join us, I think, from Athens, Georgia, coming up at 3 p.m. With more thoughts on the Padres, where they are 1/3 of the way through the season. Alan Slewa, friend of the show, with more on the NBA postseason. We know one team in the NBA Finals. What about the other? Plus the Lakers offseason. We'll catch up with Alan at 3:30. Dave Velasquez, longtime San Diego State men's basketball assistant. Of course, we shared the good news yesterday that Miles Bird will be back. If you're an Aztec fan, of course, it is good news. Dave Velasquez was with Miles throughout this process, including in Chicago at the NBA Combine. So Dave Velasquez will join us today at 4:30 with more on the Aztecs and more on Miles Bird's decision to return. And oh, by the way, programming announcement for you right now that I haven't even told Brent about. But tomorrow at 4:30, Miles Bird will be on the show. So the Aztec, I don't think he has spoken publicly about this decision as of yet. Maybe a quote I saw on social media that we talked about yesterday. But Miles will join us on the radio tomorrow at 4:30 with more on his decision to return to the Mesa. We're going to hear from Mike Shildt in a moment. I know it's a Padres off day. Sometimes things get a little wonky on Padres off days, especially when a game plays out in the manner in which it played out yesterday. We couldn't even talk about it yesterday because we had SDFC yesterday afternoon. So we signed off right when the Padres game was ending. It was as disappointing as it gets. Now, I don't want to overreact, but I don't want to underreact. So I want to react because we're paid to do that. I want to hear from you as well. 70470, start it with the word team, or you can call us 877-767-4760. The thing with yesterday is, again, you take the long view or you take the step back and you say you won a series at home against a below average team, and you'll take the series win. It's not a bad thing to win a series, but when you already had 2 games in hand and you hand Miami that game, that's where the disappointment comes in. And some of it was almost inexplicable or unexplainable. We get it. It's baseball. Things happen. But this is a Miami team that looked like was ready to warm up the plane, warm up the bus. They blew leads Monday and Tuesday. They blew a 6-run lead Tuesday. It looked like they wanted to do everything in their power to get out of San Diego, to the point where their second baseman left the game because he couldn't field a ball. You felt bad for him. We talked about that, Ronnie Simon. Yesterday, the Padres jumped all over the Marlins, right? They led 6-1 midway through the game. And you're like, it was a formality. I didn't even consider the fact that they could lose the game when we were talking about it. It was 6-1. And then in the blink of an eye, it's 6-6. And then you're trailing 7-6. But here's what makes it even more egregious. It's one thing to blow a 6-1 lead, but they did blow a 6-1 lead, and then they reclaimed the lead on a Gavin Sheets 2-out, 2-run home run. This clutch hitter who's doing everything to will this team to wins here recently, yet they still refuse to win some of the games that Sheets has done his best work in, like the 2-home-run game in Toronto or the game yesterday. And I'm just left kind of shaking my head. to be completely fair, and I think most people would recognize this, I have not been critical of Mike Shildt by and large for in-game decision-making. I think that's completely fair. I think I was more critical of Bob Melvin, and that was not because I didn't think Melvin was a good manager. I just thought there was more times that we were fairly critiquing him in terms of maybe being a batter too late on a pitching change, the old Sleepy Bob moniker, so to speak. Shildt, by and large, we haven't been as critical. I think I was last year in the postseason. They pitched to Shohei Ohtani in game 1 of the NLDS. It made no sense. He made them pay. I think there was another moment like that maybe later in the series. But by and large, the regular season, I've given him credit. I think he's pushed the right buttons, so to speak. There were multiple factors at play yesterday, and I don't know who gets most of the blame. We could just say Jim. That's easy because he can't defend himself. I thought they went into the game asking for trouble. What do I mean by that? Their bullpen was taxed. And prior to the game, they optioned one of the relievers that was fresh, Omar Cruz. So they kind of knew that Kyle Hart was starting the game. They knew there was a possibility he wasn't going 5 or 6 innings. In fact, I was somewhat impressed. He went 4 2/3 innings in the game. But the moment that your starting pitcher doesn't give you length and you're running on fumes with your bullpen and you just optioned a fresh reliever and you've got multiple relievers down, all of a sudden you end up with Wandy Peralta on the mound in a 1-run game. And you can't end up with Wandy Peralta on the mound in a 1-run game when you have a bullpen that includes Adrian Morejon and Jason Adam and Robert Suarez, and you get the point. But that's what played out. I get it. Some of these pitchers aren't going to pitch every single day. I'm an advocate for that not happening. Jason Adam has already pitched 27 times. That includes yesterday. He did not have it. By the way, if you pace that out, that's an 81 appearance season. It ain't happening. There wasn't a Padre last year with more than 65 appearances out of the bullpen. I'd be surprised if anyone reached 70, for example, this year. I think they'd prefer for a reliever to be more in that 60 range. So, okay, you have some circumstances at play, but what got to me was that as Wandy Peralta blows this lead, Robert Suarez is up in the bullpen. So it's one thing if you're not going to turn to Suarez, like if everyone's down and you just have to find a way and it's all hands on deck, more understandable to me. Listen, this would play out completely differently in October. Kyle Hart's nowhere near the starting pitching mound, right? He's nowhere near the mound and as a starting pitcher in the postseason, but he was in this regular season game. And of course, you would never turn to your bullpen in the manner in which they turned to it yesterday if your season was on the line. But it just felt like we've spent so much time, Brent, talking about these games coming up. San Francisco on the road, Dodgers on the road, Dodgers at home, Diamondbacks on the road, that like you're trying to build this equity. And it felt like a sweep was almost inevitable when they led 6-1, and then inevitable when they took an 8-7 lead and they just squandered it. And I could go into a number of different factors as to why, but at the end of the day, it's a game that they can't get back, and now they need to respond against Pittsburgh.
It was just one of those deals where you thought they blew it, and then they came back and like, oh, okay, they're good.
Yep.
Like 3 times. Because, they went up big and like, oh, okay, they got this. They're going to cruise now. It's the Marlins. And then they blew the lead and you're like, oh God. And then like right away, they're like, oh, okay, they got the runs back. We're good. They're okay now. They woke them up. And then they immediately blew the lead again. And then they took the lead and then they blew the lead again. And so it was just like, how many times
can you do that?
Yeah, it's almost it was only 1 loss in the column, but it felt like we lost like 4 separate games against the Marlins.
Well, to the point of, remember what we said yesterday, it's like, well, the 6-game losing streak felt like a long time ago because they won in come from behind fashion Sunday in Atlanta, impressively. They trailed 3-1 in the 6th. They came back from 3-0 down Monday. They looked lethargic until they didn't. Manny hit that big home run. They won, and that was in 11 innings. And then, of course, Tuesday was this remarkable comeback. They trailed by 6 runs in that game, and they came all the way back to win 8-6. So that felt really good. And I'm telling you, if they would have swept the Marlins yesterday, I would have been fully over the 6-game losing streak, and it would barely be referenced because it would have felt so long ago moving forward. But now that they lost yesterday, I think there was this belief like, okay, 6-game losing streaks behind them. They've played better. They won a series in Atlanta. They won a series against Miami. Okay, fair. That's the glass half full way to look at it. The Jon and Jim way to look at it sometimes, because I'm just a realist, is, well, they're 4-8 in their last 12 games because the 6-game losing streak started it. Yes, they took 2 out of 3 in Atlanta, which was encouraging. The only game they lost was the day that Michael King was scratched, so I can live with that. And yes, they took 2 out of 3 against Miami. It was not easy to take 2 out of 3 against Miami, But again, you kind of take a step out, and they're 4-8 in their last 12 games. But let's take even a longer view. They started 14-3. And the Padres right now, you look at these NL standings, and again, I get it. It's early. The season hasn't been determined as of yet. But that 14-3 team has not been seen for a while because the Padres overall are now 31-23. So what's the math on that? They're 17-20 since their start. So it hasn't been awful. It hasn't been embarrassing. It hasn't been pathetic, but it's been below average. Now, the good news is nobody's run away with anything. Dodgers haven't played great baseball recently, lost yesterday. Giants haven't played well recently, lost yesterday. So you're 2 games out in your division. You're only a third of the way through the season. But again, that 14-3 team, nobody expected them to play like that all year. But they haven't looked the part now over the last 6 weeks, essentially.
That's one of the things that makes yesterday burn a little more is that, all those other teams lost. And that was a prime situation for us playing, a less than average team that we could have picked up a game, but we blew it. Now we got nothing. You get nothing and like it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a zero-sum thing. It's like, well, yeah, there were some good moments in that game. There really were. Gavin Sheets specifically, the 5-run inning that they put together. Although Fernando Tatis Jr. ran through a stop sign that ended that 5-run inning, we never will know if they would have scored more runs in that inning. So there's a lot to react to. We'll hear from Mike Shildt on the other side. We have good giveaways for you today as well. 4-pack of tickets to the San Diego County Fair, a pair of tickets to see Brad Paisley coming up next week, June 7th, Gallagher Square at Petco Park. Plus, Mike Faren, MLB Network Radio at 3. Alan Sliwa on the NBA playoffs at 3:30. Dave Velasquez and Miles Bird returning to the Mesa at 4:30. And again, if you missed it, Miles Bird will join us tomorrow at 4:30 with more on his decision. We're just getting started. We'll hear from Mike Shildt on the other side. What went wrong? Who was to blame for the loss? This is Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760 and live on the iHeartRadio app. All right, Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760. Again, really good show lined up for you today, including giveaways, 4-pack of tickets to the San Diego County Fair, pair of tickets to see Brad Paisley next week at Gallagher Square, Petco Park. Mike Faren, MLB Network Radio at 3. Alan Slewa at 3:30. Dave Velasquez, longtime Aztec assistant on Miles Bird's decision. He will join us coming up at 4:30. So we're talking about who's to blame for yesterday's. The Padres, inexplicably lose. They had a 5-run lead against the Marlins at home. You have to win the game, but they didn't. And we've blamed Jim. But let's hear from Mike Shildt on the way it played out with the bullpen. This is just a kind of a brief snippet, a minute or two of Mike Shildt post-game as the Padres fall in the finale to the Marlins.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of attrition, right? You're talking about 9 games, last 7, a bullpen game, extra innings. These guys, man, so much respect for the bullpen. Those guys they're getting after it, man. They're getting as extended as we're comfortable with, and listen, it's they laid it out there and they put some swings in the ball, and we hurt ourselves in the 8th, and that was kind of the story.
Was that lane for Wandy at the bottom of the lineup? Is that attrition kind of why he stayed out there for the top 2 in that lineup there?
Yeah, there's we didn't want to go Suarez more than 1 out of 5 out of 7. We justified it before the game with Adam out of 5 out of 7. Had to use Morgan kind of early. Had some everybody else was down except for Reynolds, who threw 57, 2 days off, up and down yesterday. So yeah, that's what I mean by the attrition part.
So the way Mike Shildt kind of positioned it there, and I understand it, and I made this point earlier, which is like, that's kind of the it is what it is avenue or lane that he took, that, listen, we couldn't really play all of our matchups. We didn't have all the cards in our deck. We had pitchers that were down. And once the lead was blown, they had a 5-run lead. And once you got into like a 1-run game, they didn't have the typical options available to them. Now, and here's the other thing. If Jason Adam looked like Jason Adam, maybe they win this game, but he didn't. So they went deeper into their bullpen. They went to Wandy Peralta, and then all of a sudden Wandy Peralta blows the lead there in the 8th inning. So are you buying that, Brent, that it's attrition, it's a long year, they've had some extra inning games, their bullpen is taxed, therefore it gives them a little bit of cover for the way yesterday went down?
No, I think that's just Shilty being Shilty. He'll never throw anybody under the bus. So that's just kind of his way of not making excuses, but that's just kind of his way of it's his way of alibying it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's not going to say it's not. It'd be one thing if they knew ahead of time, or every once in a while you'll get that spot in the rotation. It's like, oh, we got to do a bullpen day, but we'll know ahead of time that it's going to be a bullpen day, so you kind of know what to expect. Yesterday was not really a designated bullpen day, but it turned into one. So I don't know. It's just Shilty being Shilty again.
Yeah, again, it's like, that's why I said earlier, it's like, well, it's kind of our job to react to it. I don't want to overreact to it. I'm not kicking and screaming, and I don't want to underreact to him. Just be like, who cares? It's one game. I think it's fair to have a reaction to it, and I think it's fair to kind of understand the complexities that are involved in it as well.
Well, it's like you said, it's not Bob Melvin in Philly to where it's
right.
Just like
what are you doing?
Glaring mistake.
Why is Mike Clevenger still on the mound? Why is Sean Manaea still on the mound? It's just, I looked up and we were doing our show and it was late in the game, and Darren was in here, and it was great to catch up with Darren. And you look up and you see a left-handed pitcher in Wandy Peralta in a 1-run game in the 8th inning facing a right-handed batter, and you're like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Then you take the step back and you listen to Mike Shildt, and I understand what he's saying. I don't necessarily agree with what he is saying. Maybe some of this was done again by the front office. Like you have what you have available to you in your bullpen, okay, on any given day. If guys are down, they're down. I get that. You're not going to put anyone's health in jeopardy to try to win some random game in May. And the fact that they had the large lead and all of a sudden that was squandered, maybe that put them in that spot. But it's one of those games that over the course of a year, of course, there's going to be some you pull out of a hat. There's others like, how did you lose that game? And I'm just looking at it from the perspective of, I know what's coming, and I see that June schedule, and I think they're capable of playing well in that June schedule, but it's daunting what they have coming up. And this was looking like maybe go 5-1 on this homestand. You win yesterday 3-0. You take 2 out of 3 from Pittsburgh, you're 5-1. Maybe they still go 5-1. and win the next 3 games against Pittsburgh. Then no complaints, all is good. But if you don't do that against Pittsburgh, you still know what's on the other side of it. You don't have Michael King, you don't have Yu Darvish. And it's tricky what they have coming up. It's really tricky what they have coming up. So we'll continue to react to that. Again, coming up on the other side. What I actually want to do this hour, I want to give away the Brad Paisley tickets this hour. So we'll give those away. We've got a pair of tickets to see Brad Paisley. That's going to be with Walker Hayes, Avery Anna, June 7th, Gallagher Square at Petco Park. So we'll give those away. Did you say 25, by the way, or 24 on the break here? I forgot what you said. Okay. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back with much more reactions to the Padres on this off day, losing to the Marlins, looking ahead to the Pirates. Again, they dodged the one Pirate bullpen. I think you know what I'm talking about. We'll discuss it again on the other side. This is Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760 and live on the iHeartRadio app.
The support is sponsored by Macy's. The Padres have an off day today. They're back at it tomorrow for a weekend series against the Pirates down at Petco Park. It's going to be Mitch Keller going for the Pirates and Nick Pivetta on the hill for San Diego. First pitch is set for 6:40. Tonight, the Pacers will try and eliminate the Knicks in New York and move on to face OKC in the NBA Finals. Tip-off for Game 5 from Madison Square Garden is set for 5 o'clock. SDFC lost last night to Seattle 1-0. The team's next match is Saturday night at Snapdragon Stadium against Austin FC. You can hear that match with coverage beginning right here at 7 o'clock on your home for San Diego FC, San Diego Sports 760. What will you find at Macy's Backstage? How about essential warm weather styles, just $30 and under, like dresses, shoes and bags, men's and even kids looks. Find the latest trends, new arrivals, and great prices at a Macy's Backstage store near you.
All right, we're giving away Brad Paisley tickets this hour. Be listening. A reminder, download the all-new iHeartRadio app. Put Jon Jim and San Diego Sports 760 in your presets. On the all-new iHeartRadio app, you can listen live on the app. You can listen back as well to any hour or interview on the show, weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. All right, coming up at 3 p.m., Mike Faren, MLB Network Radio, will join us. His thoughts on how the Padres could overcome these pitching injuries, where they may turn when we approach a trade deadline. We're nowhere near it as of yet, but it'll be here before we know it. So Mike Faren will join us coming up at 3 p.m. A couple of thoughts as we put a bow on yesterday and look ahead for the Padres. They don't get Paul Skeens, which is a huge win. Do you know what Paul Skeens did yesterday, folks? He went 6 2/3 scoreless innings. So nobody needs to see Paul Skeens. Well, at some point, we'll see Paul Skeens, all right, in his career. Assuming he's got a 10 or 15-year career, we'll see Paul Skeens. They've missed him 4 consecutive series for whatever reason. Honestly, after yesterday, I'm cool with it because I want to see the Padres take advantage of the Pirates this upcoming weekend at Petco Park. The other thing is, like, it gets real. It's not just the 17 games they have coming up. I think JD's third had it in our chat, and I'm going to take him at his word because I think it's right. They play 26 games the next 27 days, and they're going to do it without Michael King to start and without Yu Darvish to start. Doesn't mean they won't be back at some point, but are you counting on that? And there's nowhere you turn. What's the saying? Like, burn the ships. Got to be careful saying that. There's, like, I don't think you don't have all this depth you're turning to. Like, where are you turning? You're not going to go make an acquisition. You wouldn't think some high-level acquisition just because you got a lot of games in a short period of time. Like, we're not near the trade deadline as of yet. And you look at what their system is producing right now. Like, Kyle Hart was in AAA. They called him up for this random spot start. And you're already feeling the impact of not having Michael King because Kyle Hart didn't give you enough quality to help you win that game yesterday, unfortunately. Yeah, you got players like a Matt Waldron potentially that can help you out, and he did a year ago. But again, if you think you're going to go acquire some top flight starter, they already did it with Nick Pivetta in the offseason, and they're going to count on the Pavettas and the Ceases and the Randy Vasquezes and whomever else, Brent, to try to get them through this period of time where, you know, they had all those off days early. Those have run out, and now it's a lot of baseball in a short period of time.
Well, now they're in the, you know, the dog days of summer are about to start.
Yeah, it's going to start. Yeah.
And it's another thing too, where it's not like they have, you know, someone down in, you know, AAA or someone that they could just bring up for a couple weeks just to, you know, rest some of the other arms and just give relief, because they don't. It's not like, you know, they have other players like you can kick around and be like, oh, well, they could maybe bring up, you know, Tino or one of those guys to play left field or do something like that. We don't really have anybody like that on the pitching side where it's like, oh, we could bring up, you know, so-and-so, and then he could, you know, who would we even consider to bring up?
Right. I mean, I think you're already feeling the impact of that. It's a good point. Okay. So here's an example. You're basically one turn in without Michael King, and you've already run into yesterday. And that's why I say Michael King obviously is irreplaceable, and that's fine. Nobody's saying, hey, Kyle Hart, go give this team 30 starts and have a sub-3 ERA. But one start in, you already have run into an issue that would have been preventable, for example, if Michael King was healthy, let's say, and pitching yesterday.
Well, we're in the situation now where instead of, you know, having our scheduled bullpen day for Sunday, we had to use it already yesterday. It's kind of the situation we're in, where we knew we were going to have to do it, but now we had to do it, 2 days earlier. And how's that going to impact the day we originally thought we were going to have to do it? So,
well, listen, thank the Lord they went out and spent the resources they did on Pivetta this offseason, because he's been so important. Remember, I got into this yesterday, I think on the wrap-up show, where there was this commentary like, they knew they were asking for trouble in left field. Why didn't they just deal with it? And I'm like, well, it's the same reason why when you have $100 and you need to go grocery shopping, you have to make decisions. If you're shopping for a family of 4, you might now have to get the cheaper bread. You might want the better bread. You might want the more expensive cereal. You might want the soy milk. Well, you're going to settle for the milk because you got to feed the family of 4, right? That's such a John analogy, as I said last night. I was using like, I was comparing like, hey, you want quinoa, you get rice. I mean, that's something I would say. But the point is, there's a budget there. They've gone over this CBT number. They're spending, but they're not the Dodgers. It's not unlimited. There's some people, when they go to the grocery store, it's all good. They can spend the $200. Other people, it's not, and you got to spend the $80. So, and I'm not saying the Padres are on this complete budget. This, they're going to be 30th in payroll. They're not, but they made a decision. Hey, we have X amount of dollars to spend. Where are we going to spend it? And by the way, thank goodness they did it the way they did. Imagine they bring Profar back. We would have all been excited. Imagine if this played out the same way. Now you don't have Jerkson Profar. You also don't have Nick Pivetta. You also have Michael King on the IL. You also have Yu Darvish on the IL. Like, they need Nick Pivetta. They'll need Dylan Cease, because you look at the rest of the rotation. Randy Vasquez has been good, but is it going to be a little bit like Waldron last year, where eventually he's going to run out of gas? Stephen Kolek's been good, but he also had 6 runs the other day in the first inning.
What we need is something that never happens anymore,
which is,
we need a complete game from a starter.
Exactly.
Or at least, 8 innings. We need a starter. Potentially more than one would help, just to go really deep in a game. We can't just have the, now it's like, oh, you got your 6 in, that's your quality start, you're good to go now. We need a complete game, just to rest everyone in the bullpen, and just, that's what we need, but that never happens anymore.
It's true. And here's the thing. They do get the reset today. So it's like the night before you're going to run a marathon. Not that I've ever run one. And not that Brent's ever run one. I don't even need to ask. But the day
I run them all the time.
The day before you run the marathon, you're resting, but then you're in the marathon. And that's how I equate this right now for the Padres. They begin tomorrow. Maybe not the hardest part of their marathon. It's Pittsburgh at home for 3. But they are beginning what in today's baseball is a marathon stretch, when you play 26 games in 27 days. This was not abnormal 40 years ago. It was a lot of 26 games in 27 days. It's become much more abnormal in recent history, where they've lengthened out the season in terms of calendar days to provide off days for teams. And the Padres took advantage of that in April and played some of the better baseball in the sport in April. They've come back to earth in May, and the real challenge is going to begin in June. The issue, they were always going to play the schedule that they were going to play. Like, that's not a problem. They're always going to play the Dodgers 13 times, and the Giants and the Diamondbacks and whatever else. The issue is when you have to play those games without some of your key pieces, like a King, like a Darvish. And the other thing about being at the 1/3 point, they're exactly 1/3 of the way through the season. Okay. They've played 54 games. Here's I don't know if it's irony or not, but the amazing part of that is they are pacing for an identical record to last year. Like, identical. They have 31 wins. Times that by 3 is 93 wins. Now, they went about it differently last year. Started slow, raced to that successful finish, 43-19, to finish the year last year. So they're on a similar pace, but consider this, and this is not their fault. They haven't played the Dodgers in the first 54. They've only played the Giants twice. They still have them 11 times, I believe, from here on out. I don't think they've played the Diamondbacks, correct? They haven't. They still have 12 or 13 against the Diamondbacks. So in your final 108, you've got LA for 13. I'm making this up if it's right, the numbers, but it's 12 or 13. Arizona for 13. That's 26. San Francisco for 11, let's say. 37 of your last 108 are against, pretty stiff competition within your division. So I just think it's going to get more challenging ahead. Doesn't mean they can't deal with the challenges. I think they're positioned to deal with them. I do think, obviously, like most teams, they'll try to make upgrades if they're still in a playoff position, 6 weeks from now after the All-Star break. But it only stiffens from here. and they're going to go about it, unfortunately, right now without Michael King. Now, maybe Michael King comes back in a week or a week and a half. I think Mike Shildt said post-game, the reports on King, this is his direct quote, have been very excellent, whatever that means. Not excellent, but very excellent. So do we take him at his word? Sometimes we have, and that's backfired. Maybe this will be proven to be true because they could use him back.
I'm not as worried as other times when, we've had pitchers where they had, quote, mysterious arm injuries. And then, there's no mystery. It always ends up being, Tommy John surgery. It doesn't sound like that. It just sounds like some sort of like weird, almost like deep muscle cramp or whatever that he got from, sleeping in a weird position. So that's one of those things where he could be ready to go in a couple days, or it could be a couple weeks. It's not one of those things where I'm, like, remember when Clevenger, they're like, oh yeah, he's fine. And then like 3 hours later, they tried it out like, oh yeah,
Tommy
we're
John.
shutting him down for the rest of the season.
Right.
I'm not like, I don't have that in the back of my head to where I'm worried that Shilt's going to come out tomorrow and be like, yeah, we're shutting him down.
Hopefully not. And I'm with you. But the thing with pitching injuries is like, you're always like one announcement away. With hitters, it's not typically that. I mean, you're not one announcement away. You guys break their hands and they come back in the same season. I mean, it's more rare. Now you've had the Acuna type injuries. I mean, you can have some weird injuries. You can have an ACL in there, but by and large, hitters get back in the field within the same year. And sometimes with pitchers, that's just not the case. We'll get into it all with Mike Faren, MLB Network Radio, coming up at 3. On the other side, we're giving away 2 free tickets to see Brad Paisley, plus one of the 2 teams we know for the NBA Finals. Oklahoma City has dominated their way to the NBA Finals. Does it matter who they play? We're going to hear from Colin Cowherd from earlier today on San Diego Sports 760. His thoughts on the Thunder and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in getting there to the finals in 2025. Plus Mike Faren, MLB Network Radio at 3. Plus those Brad Paisley tickets. We'll give them away on the other side of Jon and Jim. San Diego Sports 760 live on the iHeartRadio app. All right, Mike Faren, MLB Network Radio, coming up in about 13 minutes. I think he's in Athens, Georgia. He's calling a NCAA regional. The road to Omaha will get underway this weekend. He does a little bit of everything. So Mike Faren is going to, again, hop on with us coming up at 3 p.m. I do want to give away Brad Paisley tickets. Be listening for that. We'll do it in the next 8 minutes. This is going to be a good show. June 7th, which is a week away at Gallagher Square, right inside Petco Park. Tickets and info at Ticketmaster.com. All right, we know one of the teams in the finals. Oklahoma City is the first team in the history of the NBA postseason to win 4 or more games by 30 or more points. I mean, they dominated Minnesota yesterday. They did it with their defense. It was never a contest. It was like 16-5, and they just ran away from Minnesota. They sat their starters for the last 6-7 minutes of a clinching game. That's how dominant that they were. I do wonder, Pacers have been awesome, and they seem to have a little bit of luck on their side, right? The Halliburton shot at MSG that bounces 20 feet in the air and then bounces in. They've had some other moments, like the way they finished off the Cavs in one of those games. Maybe they're able to give them a long series, but doesn't it feel like Oklahoma City is just I don't know if head and shoulders above the rest is fair, but it feels like right now they're the best team in the NBA.
Yeah, and, Indiana got some advantages, when they got Cleveland. Yes, Cleveland was the number 1 seed, but they barely had enough people left to field the team by the time they got to game 3 of that series.
There's injuries, yep.
The Knicks, the Knicks are the Knicks, as much as we're oh, this is finally going to be their year. Then they blow a couple leads. Oh yeah, never mind. They're the Knicks. They're just being the Knicks again. So I don't know. I feel like this is going to be one of those years where almost like in the NCAA tournament where you'll get a Cinderella and Butler, where they'll go on and they'll get everyone's attention, and then they'll get to the finals and they'll put up a fight, but they'll lose.
You're talking about the Pacers.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I've watched a lot of this postseason. I've told you my wife grew up in Indiana, formative years. And here's what's funny about Kristen. This is so bizarre. She is passionate about 2 NBA teams. She was born in Seattle, so she grew up rooting for the Sonics, right? But she's in her 40s. Then they left. Well, they left for Oklahoma City. And now she's not a Thunder fan, but it's the same franchise. They still keep those records, right? So she grew up a Sonics fan, but then she was raised her middle school years were spent in Indianapolis. So she became a Pacer fan. And now we might have basically Pacer Sonics. Now it's not. It's Thunder against the Pacers. But the point is, I've been watching a lot of this postseason, and I have enjoyed watching the Pacers. They just have a knack. I don't think they're as talented as Oklahoma City. I don't think they're near as complete as OKC. But for whatever reason, they've just found ways. I don't know if that would continue or not. And here would be the issue, that Oklahoma City would have home court, and it seems impossible to win there. Now, Denver won 1 game there, but they're 6-1 or 7-1 at home in the postseason. So if you can't win at OKC, then you're not going to be able to win the series without home court,
I don't know. I think they're going to have matchup problems too with OKC. I think, I'll admit it when I was wrong. I thought Chet Holmgren was going to be the biggest flop. It's just
he's good, isn't he?
7'6". He weighs $115. It's yeah, this dude's going to not last. And he's
a good player.
Prove me wrong. He's lasted. He's been durable, and he's been good. I think he's going to give them issues. He's somewhat similar to the way Cat plays, because he shoots a lot of threes and everything, but he blocks way more shots than Karl Anthony Towns does. So I think that could be an issue. If you're the NBA though, you're going to be kind of you should be promoting the hell out of Shea going up against Halliburton. The future of the league at point guard.
And again, it's staying away from the coast, where again, a lot of the intrigue with the sport over the years, Boston, Los Angeles, New York, Golden State, right? On the coast. Now you're going right into the Midwest or the Heartland. And maybe the ratings aren't going to look the same, but the league does need to start promoting players like Tyrese Halliburton and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. LeBron's only going to be around for so long. Steph's only going to be around for so long. Tatum's missing all of next year, for example, in Boston. And listen, maybe it's not the same big 3 as KD, Harden, and Westbrook, but SGA, Jalen Williams is a terrific player. To your point, Chet has been a very good NBA player. They've got not just the makings of a good team right now. I think they have a chance to be good moving forward as well. Oklahoma City. So I'm not saying it's the start of a dynasty, but Could they get one or two here over the next 2 or 3 years? It's at least a possibility right now.
To build stars, it takes time. You make a diamond, you have to compress the coal. It takes,
Steph's a good example.
Yeah, it takes time. We told Jim last week, he didn't just get drafted and then all of a sudden
onto the scene.
Everyone's, the Warriors are on national television. That took like a year or two
at least.
And who was their head coach that they fired?
Was it Mark Jackson?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So, it was like a year or two process before like the league kind of woke up and he became Steph. So I think it could be the same thing with, like Shea and a lot of these other younger players, to where they just need, I guess, TV time, for a lack of a better phrase, just so that, the people that didn't watch a lot of OKC games this year, they can tune in and be like, oh, okay, yeah, he's pretty good. I can see myself turning in to, watch Thunder games in the future, opposed to just, hey, LeBron's still here.
Right.
You can only say that for so long. And, as they get older, they're not the same players as they used to be. And you can't just keep promoting LeBron out there and expecting him to, put up the minutes that he keeps putting up, which is just a miracle. Just how many miles he's got on those knees, and he's still out there at his age, just going.
100%. I want to hear from Colin, because this was earlier today. This was Colin on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and what sets him apart from other NBA stars.
The great thing about SGA, of the many great things, what I really like is he is delivering and fulfilling everything I've been told Jason Tatum does, but doesn't really. Last year, the Celtics go on their championship run. Jaylen Brown's the MVP of the Eastern Conference Finals. Jaylen Brown's the Finals MVP. And Jaylen Brown's the aggressor and often the initiator. SGA wants the ball, is always the aggressor, and he plays Williams, Holmgren. He's got multiple great players around him, but he is clearly the alpha. And that's all I ever asked with Tatum and got pushed back. I'm holding Jason Tatum to the standard you guys all lectured me on for years on LeBron, when LeBron didn't take the shot. He's the alpha. He's the one. If he wants to be MJ, he's got to always take the shot. Okay, well, that's the standard of SGA and Jokic right now. Like I think both Jokic and SGA can elevate teammates and clearly do elevate teammates. But there is no question in this Oklahoma City room or that Denver locker room or in the huddle or anytime there's a late possession, who's the man?
It is Shai. I mean, he's listen, I thought he got a bad rap. This whole free throw merchant stuff and him getting to the line at this extreme rate. I'm watching these games. This guy's a good player. You don't fake your way to being a star in the NBA. You don't do it just by getting to the free throw line. And he's so much more than just that narrative, in my opinion. All right, here's what I want to do. Give away a pair of tickets to see Brad Paisley coming up June 7th. Gallagher Square Petco Park tickets available at Ticketmaster.com. If you want those tickets, it's June 7th. How about caller 7? You have 2 free tickets to see Brad Paisley June 7th. Next week, Gallagher Square Petco Park. That should be a fun evening, good act. Brad Paisley down at Gallagher Square Petco Park. Call 877-767-4760 right now if you want those tickets. Caller 7, you are going. 2 free tickets. Call now, 877-767-4760. That's 877-767-4760. Mike Faren, MLB Network Radio, his thoughts on where the Padres stand at the 1/3 mark of the season. He will join us on the other side to kick off hour 2 of Jon and Jim on San Diego Sports 760 and live on the iHeartRadio app.
This report is sponsored by Anderson Plumbing, Heating, and Air. The Padres have off today. They're back at it tomorrow for a weekend series against the Pirates down at Petco. It's going to be Mitch Keller going for Pittsburgh and Nick Pivetta on the hill for the Pods. First pitch is set for 6:40. Tonight, Indiana will try and eliminate the Knicks and join the Thunder in the NBA Finals. Tip-off for Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals in Madison Square Garden is at 5 o'clock. Last night, SDFC lost to Seattle 1-0. The team's next match is Saturday night at Snapdragon against Austin FC. You can hear that match coverage beginning at 7 o'clock right here on your home for San Diego FC, San Diego Sports 760. Anderson's drain stoppage guarantee. Solve issues for $63 or it's on the house. Nobody wows clients like they do. Anderson Plumbing, Heating, and Air has been privileged to serve over 500,000 residential clients for more than 45 years. Visit AndersonPHA.com.
Getting you all set for that drive home. Let's just start the show. Here's Jon and Jim.
All right, San Diego and Southern California, what's going on? This is hour 2 of Jon and Jim, and we'll kick off this hour shortly with Mike Faren at MLB Network Radio getting ready to call an NCAA regional, but also on top of all things Major League Baseball. So he will join us to discuss the Padres' starting pitching injuries, the challenges of adding quality starting pitching potentially as well at the deadline, and also all things Padres and NOS. So Mike Faren at MLB Network Radio will join us shortly. Really good show lined up for you today. Alan Sliwa, friend of the show at 3:30 on the NBA postseason. Dave Velasquez on the decision of Miles Bird to return to the Mesa. Dave Velasquez, longtime Aztec assistant, will join us coming up at 4:30 here this afternoon. So we're going to connect in a moment with Mike Faren, who again is, I think, juggling here this afternoon because he's been preparing for a regional, but I also asked him to join us here to talk a little Major League Baseball and Padres as well. So Mike, first of all, it's always great to have you. Mike Faren, MLB Network Radio, back with us on Jon and Jim. So before we get going into the Padres and MLB, I think I saw in a release, you're calling the Athens regional for the NCAA men's baseball tournament. Is that right? Are you in Athens, Georgia right now?
In Athens, Georgia, not Athens, Greece. So which is good because the commute is far better to Athens, Georgia. Yeah, so it should be a really fun one. We get started at 9 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow morning. We have, 4 of the top 80 home run hitting teams in the nation here in the Power 4 ballpark that has the highest home run per fly ball ratio. So it's going to be dingerific.
All right, I like it. So you're at the Coors Field of college baseball, which is Athens, Georgia, and we'll see if we get some like.
It's probably more like the Great American Ballpark.
Okay,
like, it's just like it's humid. The ball flies. Yeah, it's watching the Duke players take batting practice in Coombs, where they play as a pretty good hitter's park anymore. Watching them they were like salivating. So there's a fight at the bat rack already to get to the plate in this one.
So this is my guess. You're going to get a couple of 1-0 games tomorrow. You know baseball. I'm kidding.
I hope so.
I'd be surprised.
So great. Hour 57 minutes. Amazing.
Yeah, college baseball. Yeah, good luck. Mike Faren back with us here, Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760. I want to start just with the Padres pitching injuries. So Michael King goes on the IL with this interesting like scapula related injury. Obviously, Yu Darvish hasn't yet pitched in the regular season. From your seat, how concerning is this, what the Padres are dealing with right now in the rotation?
Well, it's not what you want, that's for sure. I mean, I think listen, they were already thin on the mound to begin with, right? And they'd gotten pretty good work for the most part over the first third of the season. So, if King is going to miss an extended period of time, I think it's a major concern. I mean, he's been their most consistent pitcher really the last 2 years. The good news is that Darvish seems to be on the road to coming back, which is going to help. It's just a matter of how you weather that storm over the next couple of weeks. And I think, the good news for them is that, while the Dodgers haven't really kicked it into gear, I'm not sure that anybody really is reasonably at this point looking and saying, hey, one of these teams in the West is going to run down the Dodgers. The good news is their best competition, like the Diamondbacks and the Braves, and even the Mets over the course of this month have slowed a little bit. They aren't playing all that well. So, they've built up a little bit of a lead. They don't want to give that back, obviously, but they need to find a way to get their starters healthy. And listen, if they have a need as they get closer to the deadline, I think by now that A.J. Preller is going to do everything he can to add to that roster. I mean, he did it last year with very little money. I think he's going to find a way to be able to do that again if they need someone.
Mike Faren, MLB Network Radio, back with us here on Jon and Jim. What do you see? I mean, when I think about the Padres this decade, they've been in the postseason in 2020, the short year, 2022, and 2024. And like most teams, like when the year ends, it's because they kind of ran out of starting pitching. In 2020, they had none of it. That it was the Dinelson Lamet, Mike Clevenger were both injured. 2022, they're pitching like Sean Manaea and Mike Clevenger in that Phillies NLCS. That didn't work. Last year, they lost Joe Musgrove, and then they tried pitching Dylan Cease on 3 days rest in Game 4 against the Dodgers, and that didn't work. So I guess my question is this. If you get to the deadline, even if they are healthy, let's say King is back out there, let's say Darvish is back out there, are you still looking to add starting pitching, just knowing how critically important it is if you get to October?
Sure, but I mean, I think the Dodgers did a lot to dispel the myth in the postseason that you can only win with good starting pitching, right? Like it's, I mean, some of it is who's pitching well at the time, and I think there's a lot of different ways to win a championship than just say we've got to have our number one go 7 innings and our number 2 go 6 and our number 3 go 5, and then like we'll figure it out in the 4th spot. And the good news is that the Padres bullpen is really strong, and I think they would be leaned on in that. So. Yes and no. I mean, I think traditionally you'd like to have as much impact in the front of the rotation as possible, but it's also like it's not like it's a death knell if they don't add beyond that. Now, I think they will. I think, or at least they'll try to. Some of it's going to depend on who's available, but. I think, listen, just get to the playoffs. The only thing, like there are 2 things, we can boil this down to 2 simple things, right? Like get to the playoffs and then play well when you get there. And that's all you can really control.
Yeah. You've made the point with us before, and I love the way you put it. And I forget what you said mathematically, but basically you made the point that like in a 7-game series in the NBA, the odds of the better team winning are so much significantly higher than Major League Baseball.
80%.
So go through that again for our listeners.
Yeah. So there was a study that was done. This is probably like 6 or 7 years ago now. That let's see, in the NBA, 80% of the favorites win the series. Okay. In order for baseball to have that happen, every round would need to be a best of 75. So, and I think in the NFL, it's like a best of 13, and in the NHL, it's like a best of 41, somewhere around there. The numbers aren't quite there, but baseball is every round would have to be a best of 75. And when you think about it, like the difference between a 78-win team and a 90-win team is 2 wins a month. So bad teams beat good teams all the time. Diamondbacks won the pennant 2 years ago, weren't a very good team. In fact, last year's team missed the playoffs was way better. This year's team is probably even better than last year's team in terms of overall talent, and they're 2 games under 500, right? So that's looking just in the own division. Mm-hmm. So, I think we spend a lot of time playing who's the favorite and how do you line up and all of that, and that's great. But the reality is that baseball is far more variable for the most part than the other sports are. And I think, like all you have to do is look at the fact that since 1988, the Dodgers have won 1 World Series that wasn't in a shortened year, right? The Yankees, and that's not to take away from their shortened year championship. I'm just saying, like, if they played another 102 games that year, who knows what would have happened? Who knows what kind of health they would have had in the postseason? The Yankees haven't won a World Series since 2009. They hadn't even been in 15 years until last year. So, just because you're a big spender, baseball has a way to be able to even itself out.
I think it's a great point. Mike Faren, MLB Network Radio, with us right now on Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760. I know the deadline's 2 months out, but you know how people love to talk about names. Padres have a glaring hole in left field. I think they have the lowest OPS from that position in the sport. Obviously, they were never going to replace Jurickson Profar, and that's played out. Knowing what we know right now, what type of options may they have, in the weeks ahead as we approach the deadline in July?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think, the one guy that's really available that we know of is Luis Robert Jr., and he's not having a great year for Chicago, for the White Sox. So, I mean, that would be a potential name, but he's also he's got 2 club options, right, that are at $20 million per, which if he's playing well isn't a lot for him, but might be outside, where the Padres sit in terms of their comfort level for spending. Pittsburgh could move like Tommy Pham, which probably, I know Padres fans have seen that before. Yep. And, he's not the same player that he was when he was the Padres just because he's 37 years old. So somebody like that might fit the mold. The Angels, I think Taylor Ward is kind of an interesting player. He's pretty streaky, but he would be an upgrade over what they've had in left field. So he's another guy that I think could factor into the mix. And then there's always the possibility that like Baltimore completely falls out of it. And I know he's not a great outfielder, but Ryan O'Hearn is a really good offensive player. And, I'm still not sure that Gavin Sheets is going to keep up what he's done to this point, just because it's such an outlier over what he's done the rest of his career. Maybe he's having that, great season that you need guys to have. But adding it back, the quality of O'Hearn would be pretty significant. And they have other guys that are going to be free agents, Ryan Mountcastle, Cedric Mullins, who had a great April, but a really slow May. Like all those guys kind of fit the Padres. So I think those are possibilities for them when you get to the deadline. But this is like the problem with the trade season now and with the expanded playoffs is that we're still probably a month away from having a full understanding of who's truly available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Again, because you have so many teams that are qualifying for the postseason, which means you have more teams than ever that are even going for it. There's always going to be more buyers in theory than sellers when you have this many teams that make the postseason. Mike, one more for you before you go, because I know you're busy and you're getting ready for Athens tomorrow. We appreciate you taking time. Fernando Tatis Jr., it's been all over the map. He got off to this unbelievable start. So did the Padres. He might have been like an MVP front runner a month into the season. I just looked it up a moment ago in his May splits. He's hit 188 in May, and the month is about to come to an end. Is that concerning to you, or just part of a 162 game season, even for stars?
I think it's probably the latter. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not going to make anybody feel any better and say, yeah, well, it's just baseball, but it kind of is just baseball. And, I'm really not worried about him. I mean, when he's been healthy the last couple of years, he's been really dynamic. And even the first half of last season before he had the injury, he was outstanding. So, maybe he was a little over his skis in April. I mean, the OPS was crazy high. It was well over 1,000, right? So, takes back down a little bit. He's still going to take his walks. He still plays great right field. Like, I'm not really worried about him. I think in the end, his numbers are going to look really good. He may just not be a leading candidate for the MVP award, but I wouldn't be surprised if he worked his way back in the mix. He's certainly talented enough that can happen, but there's clearly an adjustment that he needs to make.
All right, let me quickly handicap this. Number 7, Georgia at home against Binghamton, then Oklahoma State and Duke. I like Binghamton to get out of this regional.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Binghamton will hit some homers, right? They're actually kind of a fun team.
Okay.
They have a saying that they're more gritty than pretty, and I can't tell you how much I love that. As somebody who grew up watching the 1983 White Sox, when the Rangers manager then was Doug Rader, and he said that the White Sox were winning ugly. That really that speaks to me, right? So I love that. But listen, Georgia has a lot of power. They have as many hard throwers as anybody in the country. They and Oklahoma State both have a lot of left-handed power. Duke has an obscene amount of left-handed pitching. And I mean like legitimately 7 guys that they could go to from the left side that could help them win ball games, including their starter, Owen Brooks, for tomorrow. I think it's going to be a real challenge. I think there are 3 good teams. Oklahoma State's been a great story. They got to a terrible start this year. Matt Holliday's brother, Josh, is their head coach, born and raised in Stillwater, played for the Cowboys. So it's cool. And Georgia hasn't been to Omaha since 2008. And so, that's a team that is hungry to get back. And Wes Johnson, the former Twins pitching coach, is so great. He's just a great dude, too. Loves college baseball. He's a terrific coach. So it's good. I think it's going to be a really fun regional. I don't know that it's the group of death. I think I'd put that on the Eugene regional, where Oregon is one of 3 top 30 RPI teams that are there. But this one's going to be a lot of fun. And if you like offense, it's going to be the place to be, because they're going to be like launching balls into the tree. This ballpark gives up 50% more home runs on fly balls than the average Power 4 ballpark does.
So it's not Petco, is what you're saying. And by the way, as someone that's as someone that's been to Binghamton, New York, I would say the same thing. It's more gritty than pretty. Binghamton, New York, as well.
They got this brand new facility there that's like somebody made a donation of $60 million to upgrade their facility. They have an SEC quality baseball facility at SUNY Binghamton. Isn't that awesome?
Hey, listen, it's going to be great. We might have to bring the show on the road. We're going to bring Jon and Jim on San Diego Sports 760 out to Binghamton next year. No, I'm kidding. Mike, appreciate you taking time. Have a good call this weekend. Let's talk more as we get closer to the deadline.
Yeah, sounds good, John. Take care.
Great stuff. Mike Faren, MLB Network Radio. We'll react on the other side. Alan Sleewell will join us with more thoughts on the NBA postseason plus the Lakers offseason at 3:30. Plus, is a change coming to March Madness as soon as next March. That's next. Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760, live on the iHeartRadio app. All right, San Diego FC back Saturday night. They're going to take on Austin FC. Snapdragon Stadium. You can hear the match live starting at 7 right here on your home for SDFC, San Diego Sports 760. Jon and Jim without Jim. By the way, Jim will return on Monday. I had not texted with him in like 24 hours, which is like an abnormality for me and Jim, but he's on his honeymoon anniversary, right? But I texted him within the last hour, and I said, Padres aren't going to win today. I blame you. These are off today. And no response. So he might be, who knows, gallivanting around the islands of Hawaii would be my guess.
You know, when he's here, he won't like do anything Backpage related until like 5:44.
Correct.
I woke up this morning and he already sent me a story for the Backpage today,
which would have been at like 4 a.m. Hawaiian time, probably, or maybe sent it last night.
It was sometime this morning, so I don't know what the time difference is.
At least a couple hours back, and for Jim, any hours back means he's probably sleeping. Yeah, look up the time in Honolulu. Is it 2 hours back or 3 hours back in Honolulu right now? I get that confused. It might be 3 hours. Is it 12:30 there? Or whatever, 12:20? Probably not 12:30. Oh, Mike's pointing at me. 3 hours back. All right, so it's lunchtime, 12:20 right now in Honolulu, which is where he is, which means I can't even believe he's awake right now.
He sent in 11, so still that'd be like early for Jim because that would have been
super
like
early.
8 o'clock.
8 a.m. Yeah, super early. All right, Alan Sliwa, Hoops Talk on YouTube, friend of the show. Obviously, he's done a great job in his career covering the Lakers. He's also a San Diego State grad. He's also a San Diegan and a Padres fan. He'll join us coming up in about 10 minutes at 3:30. I woke up to this story that's been playing out for at least a year, but the president of the NCAA, Charlie Baker, was quoted today as saying the NCAA is doing more than just exploration about expanding March Madness from 68 teams to either 72 or 76, to the point that they want to have clarity on it this summer. And if they expand the tournament, it's for 2026. It's for now. It's for the next tournament. Is either going to be, if they expand, either going to be 72 or 76 teams. They're talking with their TV partners about it now, both CBS and Warner Brothers Discovery. Of course, because you have Turner, right, with like Charles Barkley, and then you've got CBS that broadcast these games. You know, you have to, here's what I would say. The NCAA tournament has expanded a lot over the years. At one point, it wasn't 64 teams. They went from 48 to 64. Then they went from 64 to 65, then 65 to 68. So it's not like it's unprecedented, and it's not like you're going from 68 to 96, but you also have to be super careful never to kill the golden goose. This thing has been perceived as one of the great events in American sport. All right. Outside of a Super Bowl, some would argue this is as good of a sporting event as America has. Just be careful. The path you're walking down, maybe it's been chartered before, but you can't afford to mess this up. Everyone loves the NCAA tournament. Don't screw it up. NCAA is what I would say.
They're at risk of doing what other sports leagues have done, whether it's baseball, the NBA, to a certain degree, the NFL, to where they're diluting down the postseason so much to just try and get everybody in. And if they want to do it this one last time, that's fine. But I would like it if they put some sort of clause in the contract that said, we're not going to even bring up increasing the number of teams for X amount of years. Because I don't want to do this every single year. And you know they're going to because of money. So, you know, this gets approved, then it's going to be, oh, well, we should try and get 80 some teams in, and then we should try and get, and where's it going to stop? That's my worry with this Pandora's box is nobody's going to check it because they want the money. So, you know, where's it going to stop? Are they going to be like, oh, we need 100 teams? It's like, so pretty much everyone except for like 3 teams is going to get in.
Well, here's my worry, that it once again is tilted in the favor of the quote unquote power, where I'll give you an example. I think last year, what I forget, was the SEC, did they have 12 of their, I don't even know how many teams are in the SEC right now. Is it 16? Did they have 12 of their 16 teams in? And if you expand the field by 4 or 8 teams, how many of those bids are going to leagues like the SEC and the Big 12 and the Big 10, as opposed to a league like the new iteration of the Pac-12 or the current version of the Mountain West? If you have 8 more spots and 7 of them go to the ACC, Big 10, Big 12, SEC, then what is the point here? Do we really need 15 of the 16 teams in the Big 12 in the field. Like, if anything, if you're going to expand it, create opportunities for like 30-3 teams in the Missouri Valley Conference to get in if they don't win their conference tournament.
See, I'm not as worried about that in college basketball. If this was college football, I'd be totally worried about it, because college football hates the little guy. They only are about the bigger programs. College basketball embraces the little guy. They want Cinderellas, and they want the mid majors and the smaller schools in there, so they can like create drama against like some of the blue bloods and the bigger names in the tournament. So I don't think they would do that necessarily. And I didn't take too much stock into them picking all the SEC teams and putting them in the tournament this year, because that just happens every once in a while. It was a couple years, 3-4 years ago, the Big Ten had was almost like 3/4 of their league made the tournament.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Every once in a while that's going to happen, but the ACC's done it in the past. Back in their heyday, the Pac-12's done it before. So it's going to happen every once in a while. If it happens every year, or, more to where it starts to seem like a trend, then I'll have an issue with it.
All right, we'll have more on that coming up. We got time. We're here until 6 p.m. Alan Slee was going to join us on the other side. The Thunder are in the finals. Who will join them? Plus his thoughts on the Lakers offseason, the Padres, SDSU, and more. Plus Dave Velasquez, longtime San Diego State basketball assistant, will join us on Miles Bird's decision coming up at 4:30. Keep it here. It's Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760, and live on the iHeartRadio app.
This report is sponsored by the Temecula Valley Balloon and Wine Music Festival. The Padres are off today. They're back at it tomorrow for a weekend series down at Petco Park against Pittsburgh. It's going to be Mitch Keller going for the Pirates and Nick Pivetta on the hill for the Padres. First pitch is scheduled for 6:40. Indiana will try and eliminate the Knicks tonight in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals and move on to face OKC in the NBA Finals. Tip-off from Madison Square Garden is set for 5 o'clock. San Diego FC lost last night to Seattle 1-0. The team's next match is Saturday night at Snapdragon against Austin FC. You can hear that right here with pre-match coverage starting at 7 o'clock right here on your home for San Diego FC, San Diego Sports 760. Temecula Valley Balloon and Wine Music Festival is happening June 20th through the 22nd, featuring Walker Hayes, Cody Jinks, Alabama, and more. Tickets are available now at TemeculaValleyFestival.com, powering the best events from start to finish, events.com.
All right, NBA Finals nearly set. We do have Game 5 tonight, as Brent just said, in the Eastern Conference. Pacers and Knicks. Knicks will try to overcome a 3-1 deficit in that series. And, of course, Oklahoma City is heading back to the finals for the first time in over a decade. It's great to catch up right now with Alan Sliwa, a friend of the show. You can catch him on YouTube. He's doing a great job. Hoops Talk with Alan Sliwa on YouTube. He's doing it each and every weekday. And, Alan, I guess I just want to start with the Thunder. I mean, it just seems at this point like, I don't know if they're head and shoulders above the rest of the league, but it appears as if they're going to be a prohibitive favorite in the NBA Finals. Do you see a scenario where they're not, the champs 2 weeks from now or not?
Honestly, no, I don't. And they're going to be, I think what's so unique about them is they're, I want to say, the second youngest team in the history of the NBA to get to the NBA Finals. It doesn't look like they're going anywhere anytime soon. They're stockpiled with picks for years. I think their front office has done as good of a job as anybody out there. And in a couple of weeks, they're probably the champs. So it's the Western Conference is very competitive. I mean, we know how many different teams are trying to fight to get out of the West. I know they went 7 against Denver, but they're so young. It's like they shouldn't be where they are at this stage of many of these guys' careers, whether it's Shea or Jalen Williams or Chad Holmgren. But they're making it happen, and they're not going anywhere.
Let me ask you this, because obviously they just took care of the T-Wolves, and they did so impressively. I mean, especially Game 5 was absurd. I mean, they led by 10 2 minutes into the game, and then they sat their starters for the second half of the fourth quarter on their way to that 30-something point win. But in terms of like faces of a league, as we, look into the future with an Anthony Edwards out there, a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, even like a Tyrese Halliburton right now in Indiana, like who's more recognizable moving forward, even with what played out, Anthony Edwards or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander?
I think Anthony Edwards, I think he's more recognizable. He's more of the highlight reel, and by the way, that's not saying that Shai doesn't have highlights, but Anthony Edwards, go do yourself a favor. Go top dunks Anthony Edwards in his career. And some of them you're just like, what is this? But that's what appears on SportsCenter. That's what gets on a lot of these, social media when somebody grabs a 5-second, 10-second clip. I think he's just more known. I think there's also been this fascination last year. People wanted to start comparing him to Michael Jordan. It's like, guys, what are we doing here? Everybody, take a step back. But I think it's the combination of both of those that have put him on the map more. And he's a fun player to watch. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think this is it reminds me a little bit of the San Antonio Spurs back in the day. Maybe it wasn't the most exciting, but they were stacking up championships. And I don't think Tim Duncan cared whether you liked him or not. We'll see, how Shai's career plays out. I don't really think he cares how popular he is.
Yeah, I think it's well said. Alan Sliwa, Hoops Talk with Alan Sliwa. With us right now, Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760. The thing with the Pacers, I think most would agree. Like, again, Oklahoma City, from a talent perspective, their sheer win-loss record. I saw some ridiculous note last night. I don't know if you saw this, Alan, that the Thunder are 29-1 this year against the Eastern Conference. Like, wait, what? How's that even possible? But the Pacers have this it factor. I don't know how they do it, but some of those, frantic finishes against Cleveland, the way they pulled out game 1 with that Halliburton shot, how on earth did that go in? Are the Pacers just dealing with, I don't even know how to describe it, right? It's like what they're doing this postseason is almost indescribable, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I'm going to give them a lot of credit because, I think the path that they had, I know they didn't have to face the Boston Celtics.
True.
So I thought Celtics were the best team in the Eastern Conference. But look, they beat Milwaukee. They beat Cleveland. Were there some injuries there? Sure. Indiana has nothing to do with that. They took advantage of it. Some of the comebacks that you mentioned, these just absurd comebacks. Yeah. And frankly, think about the Knicks, the momentum they had to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, the attention that they were getting, Jalen Brunson, what he's been doing. You look on that roster on paper and really there aren't too many weak links. Give Indiana all the credit in the world. How they've done it, I didn't pick them. I didn't pick them against Cleveland. I didn't pick them against New York. And I don't really actually think, I think if you really watch their team, they have a coach that's won an NBA championship before, Rick Carlisle. They have phenomenal balance. Pascal Siakam is a champion as well. He was in Toronto. They got a number of role players that understand their role. And then Tyrese Halliburton's putting up stats that, are as good as anybody's stats out there. So I guess maybe we shouldn't be surprised, but I would probably still continue with the theme. If they make it to the NBA Finals, then I would still make them an underdog, and I would still pick OKC to win.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. All right, let's turn our attention briefly here to the Lakers offseason. Obviously, we're a couple of weeks away from the offseason for the entirety of the sport. What are the priorities here for the Lakers heading into a full season, their first full season with Luka?
Get some size. I think that, no matter what they do, whatever ends up happening, there's certain decisions they have to make. Dorian Finney-Smith, is Luka signing that 4-year extension? What's LeBron going to do? All that stuff I think is going to play itself out. I don't think that's going to be most of that. I think will kind of take care of itself. How the Lakers get size and how they get just somebody to have as a defensive presence, somebody that Luka can play with and be a little bit more of a lob threat, somebody that can help with Luka's lack of defense or Austin Reeves' lack of defense. Like that's if they don't have a big, they don't really have anything. And we found that out the first round against Minnesota. That series only went 5 games, and a lot of people, including myself, I thought Lakers were walking into some good momentum in the playoffs. They had nothing without a big, so that's going to be the top priority. Obviously, however they find a way to make that happen, probably most likely through some type of a trade. From a cap space perspective, I think that's going to be difficult. They got to get a big. It's the only chance they have to making any noise in the Western Conference that seems to only be getting better.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it's always hard, obviously, in the West, and it doesn't seem like it's getting easier, even with the addition of Luka Doncic. Alan Slewa with us right now, Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760. Let's turn our attention to the Padres. It's been a good start, not a perfect start to the season. They're now without Michael King. They've been without Yu Darvish. They've played exactly 1/3 of their regular season games. What do you feel good about, and what are you concerned about with the Padres heading into the month of June?
Well, I'd say this. Again, and probably not the best example, but if you ask any San Diegan or a Padre fan out there, would you take this record at this point of the season before the season started? I don't have a difficult time thinking that somebody's going to say, no, that's not good enough.
Right.
I think that they have, if you really think about it, it hasn't been perfect. You got kind of guys in and out of the lineup. Merrill missed some time. Cronenworth missed some time. They've kind of they've calmed the water a little bit. Did yesterday's loss to Miami, was that, obviously was that a tough pill for everybody to swallow? Sure. But did they get a little bit lucky in some of those previous games? It's like you kind of let things balance out. I'm okay with where they are. I really feel like you're going to get a chance to now, what do we got? The Giants coming up for a 4-game set, Dodgers, Arizona. I really want to see them within the division. I do have some concerns. You got bullpen that's got so much stress on them up to this point, and they've been phenomenal. Are there some cracks there? And if there are some cracks, what's the trickle effect of Michael King missing some time? So they got some work to do, but honestly, I don't want to complain too much about them. I like the position that they're in. It's now just, seeing if you can hold on to the position that they're in by the time you get to the All-Star break or halfway through the season. And that's going to be a challenge.
I need your 2 cents on the Aztecs. You're an Aztec. You've been a diehard Aztec basketball fan, even covering the NBA as long as you have been here in Southern California. They get Miles Bird back. They get Magoon Guath, who was in the transfer portal, but then elected to return back. They seemingly have all the depth in the world. They have 13 scholarship players. I don't think they've ever had it in the 9 seasons under Brian Dutcher. What do you make of where the Aztecs are, what the expectations are going to be heading into next year?
Well, I think something that SDSU has done obviously starts with Coach Fisher back in the days. They've created, like you said, John, they've created expectations. Like there is, I hope San Diego State football can eventually get to a place where we're talking about them hovering around top 25 every year, but it takes a long time to solidify, like, yeah, you need to be in the mix. And that's exactly what San Diego State has done from a basketball perspective. I think it's huge bringing back a lot of guys. I think if you watch college basketball right now, one of the beauties for a program like San Diego State, and I know that not all of this works to SDSU's advantage. NIL is absurd. We'll see what eventually happens and what kind of parameters they eventually get on it. But to have guys come back and just get experience, that first year for San Diego State, getting that experience, and now you're bringing back guys that get to be with Coach Dutcher again and the rest of the staff. I think, in college, if you're not one of these top programs that are churning and burning guys every single year, your hope is to just gain some equity with players. And I think they're going to obviously have that opportunity next season.
All right. Again, for our listeners, you can catch more of Alan on YouTube, right? Give us the 30 seconds for our listeners, Alan, right? Because you're doing Hoops Talk. You're also doing the Sliwa Show as well, weekdays, Monday through Friday. Where can our listeners find more from what you're doing?
So if you just type in Hoops Talk with Alan Sliwa on YouTube, I do a show 8 a.m. to about 9 a.m. Monday through Friday. Very, very heavy Lakers-centric and NBA-centric. Mm-hmm. So that channel is predominantly just, NBA basketball. So that's where you can find it. You can find it all on YouTube.
All right. Great stuff, Alan. Always enjoy catching up, man. Looking forward to doing it again once we get into the month of June. And thanks for hopping on, man.
All right. Thanks, John. Appreciate it, man.
Great stuff from Alan Sliwa. Again, Hoops Talk on YouTube with Alan Sliwa. On the other side, San Diego State football, speaking of the Aztecs, releasing some kick times for their 2025 season. We'll discuss the ramifications on the other side. Plus, we'll get to the wrap at 4 p.m. And Dave Velasquez, speaking of Aztecs basketball, Dave Velasquez, longtime assistant for both Steve Fisher and Brian Dutcher. He'll join us at 4:30 with Miles Bird announcing his return to the Mesa. All of that ahead, plus a 4-pack of tickets to give away to the San Diego County Fair. This is Jon and Jim on San Diego Sports 760 and live on the iHeartRadio app. All right, rolling along, Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760. Dave Velasquez, longtime Aztec men's basketball assistant. Always great connecting with Dave. He's done an amazing job with Coach Dutcher, Coach Fisher over the years. He was with Miles Bird at the Combine in Chicago. Miles Bird is back. We're going to get Coach Velasquez's reaction to that coming up at 4:30. And programming announcement, Miles Bird will join us tomorrow on Jon and Jim at 4:30. Also, we remind you that San Diego Sports 760 and iHeartRadio present our 2025 iHeartRadio Music Festival. It's the biggest music event of the year. Legendary performances from the biggest names in music and once-in-a-lifetime collaborations. We'll announce the complete lineup for this year's show and let you know how you could win tickets before they go on sale. Everything you need to know happens next Tuesday morning, 5 a.m., another once-in-a-lifetime music event from iHeartRadio and San Diego Sports 760. All right, we are inside 3 months for San Diego State football, which means we're getting some of their schedule release information like TV details, kick times. And I think 9 of their games, they announced what network they'd be televised on today. There are still 3 games outstanding, including their opener, Thursday, August 28th against Stony Brook. A game at Hawaii is still TBA in terms of broadcast and start time. There's one other game as well at Northern Illinois at the end of September. But if you're curious about San Diego State's football schedule in 2025, 9 of the networks have been announced. Some of the game times have been announced. One of them that I think will be of interest is when Boise comes here, November 15th. That'll be a 7:30 start. As always, remember all the talk about, oh my gosh, what about all the day games at Snapdragon Stadium? Almost every single game, once again, is going to be at night. And that'll include their opener against Stony Brook. It'll include their Cal home game. That's going to be a Saturday night at 7:30. It includes a Colorado State game at home at 7:30. It includes Boise State at 7:30, right? So, again, I mean, it's been talked about a lot. And as has always been true, if you look at San Diego State football over the last 20 years and really like their rise under Brady and Rocky, look at how many times they play at night. Right, like more often than not, Brent knows it as well as I know it because we've covered San Diego State football extensively over the last decade. It's rare when we're in here and we're like, what are we doing here at 11 in the morning? That's the rarity, right?
Oh, yeah. I remember when Brady was here, we used to always talk about it when I'd call him before he'd come on air because, when him being a Michigan guy, me and him both missed, 11 o'clock kickoffs and stuff on Saturday and having, games during the day. Before I came here, I did Wisconsin Badger games and nighttime games were like a rarity. If we were on it, night, that was a big deal because it was prime time to where all the other games are all either 11 o'clock or 2:30. And it's like here, maybe 3 day games. It feels like maybe 4 tops in the in the 8 years that I've done the Aztec
true day
football.
games. Yeah, 100%.
But I like day games. For me, it seems more college football for us to play during the day opposed to doing every game at night.
Right, but one of the niches for like this new Pac-12 moving forward is they have something that other leagues can't recreate, which is the time zone advantage, so to speak. That Pac-12 After Dark brand, which really resonated for like the better part of a couple of decades on ESPN. I think they will be able to lean into that. Sure, you're not going to play at 9 a.m., but you are going to play at 7:30 or 8 p.m., so you're going to have some of those like ESPN doubleheaders maybe on a Friday night. I'm speculating. Or ESPN doubleheaders on a Saturday night where you have a chance to profile like San Diego State against Oregon State, Washington State against Boise State, Fresno State against San Diego State. I think it's going to create a nice little television window for the Pac-12 moving forward. So that's a little bit on Aztec football scheduling. We touched on this yesterday. And we've touched on it this week. This Players Era event that San Diego State was in last year, and they'll be in again this year and another year at least as well in 2026. This was the like marquee non-conference college basketball event last year. This is the event where San Diego State beat Houston and they beat Creighton and essentially punched their ticket as an at-large team to the NCAA tournament. Now that Miles Bird is back, and this team was already going to be good, but now that Miles Bird is back, again, they're going to have more of these opportunities this upcoming fall in Las Vegas, and the field is just ridiculously stacked. We had Darren Smith in here yesterday. St. John's is a part of this. St. John's is going to be like a preseason top 3-4 team in the country, so they're a new addition to this event. Kansas, the Jayhawks, perennial power. they're a new addition to this event. Remember last year, they didn't have any problems last year with these teams. I mean, they had Houston, they had Alabama, they had the Aztecs, they had Creighton, they had others. Gonzaga this year is in this event. Michigan is in this event. And that's just Tennessee, right? So, like, this thing is so loaded. Now, the Aztecs are only faced 3 of these teams. Iowa State, by the way, this year. Speaking of Tyrese Halliburton, a team that's had a lot of success in the NCAA tournament. One of the better teams in the country the last couple of years. Iowa State is in this tournament. So, shoot, Houston might be preseason number 1. They're back in the event next year. So you're talking about the Aztecs, who could be preseason top 25. You're talking about Houston, could be preseason 1. St. John's could be preseason 2 or 3. Auburn's going to be right there. Alabama's going to be right there. KU is going to be right there. Michigan's going to be preseason top 10. This is the best. This is the best non-conference event in the history of college basketball. I think it was last year, and it was under the radar because it was year 1. So maybe it was more arguable. There is no argument. The event that's going to be hosted in Las Vegas in 2025, this November, if you are an Aztec fan, you have to get to Las Vegas in November. There were thousands of Aztec fans last year. I think Aztec fans outnumbered every fan base last year with our proximity and the way the Aztecs draw in Vegas. It's the home away from home. I'm telling you definitively right now, if you root for San Diego State men's basketball, and I know a lot of you have traveled to Las Vegas for events over the years, whether it's non-conference or conference tournament or UNLV games or whatever it is, you have to be there this November. With this team coming back, with the opportunities in front of this team, make it a true home court environment, which is what it always is in Las Vegas. But again, we saw it firsthand last year, Aztecs knocking off Houston and Creighton. And I don't know who they're playing this year. Maybe it's Kansas, maybe it's Michigan, maybe it's, St. John's, maybe it's a combination of those schools, Alabama, Auburn, Baylor. But you need to get to Las Vegas because it's an amazing event. It's such a cool opportunity. That's a Sweet 16 field in November. I mean, truly, you might have, I think there's 16 or 18 teams in this event this November. I wouldn't be surprised if 9 of those 16 teams are in a Sweet 16. I mean, that's how good the field is going to be. So, like, if there's something that you circle as a sports fan in San Diego in terms of, like, what's something that would be cool with my buddies or something to bring my family to, that's a really cool event. I don't think the dates have officially been announced. It's going to be before Thanksgiving. That's what it was last year. And why not spend a few days in Las Vegas? It's affordable. You're going out there. You're watching the Aztecs. Sounds pretty good to me.
And, you talk about affordable, but, travel wise, it's a hell of a lot easier to go to Vegas than it is to go to the Bahamas for the bad boy mowers thing or to go to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is the new tournament now. It used to be, everyone would, just trip over each other to try and get into Maui or go to the Bahamas or one of those, or what's the other, the Atlantis one. There's the one in the Bahamas.
Yeah, that's the Bahamas.
There's so many of them now. I get confused. But now, because of the NIL money, everybody wants in on this tournament. And I think we're going to kind of see a domino effect of, Maui's going to have to, and these other tournaments, they're going to have to start providing some sort of like NIL reward for these teams. Cause otherwise, other than the quote free trip to Hawaii and their, free sunglasses or whatever they get when they go out there, what's the incentive for them to go out there opposed to, hey, we could go to Vegas, play in this top-notch tournament that has all these, high quality teams, and we have a potential to win a lot of money for a school.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a win-win for San Diego State and its fans because you're getting money for Mesa, you're getting quality opponents, and you're playing within a stone's throw of your fan base because you're playing in Las Vegas, Nevada. All right, we're going to kick off the third hour of Jon and Jim with the wrap. And coming up at 4:30, again, Dave Velasquez, San Diego State men's basketball assistant, will join us. Miles Bird tomorrow at 4:30. Put that in your calendar. Make a mental note. If you're an Aztec fan, Miles Bird will join us tomorrow at 4:30. And also coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, your chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to the San Diego County Fair at the Del Mar Fairgrounds. This is Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760 and live on the iHeartRadio app.
This report is sponsored by WhatsApp. The Padres are off today. They're back at it tomorrow to start a weekend series against the Pirates down at Petco Park. It's going to be Mitch Keller pitching for the Pirates and Nick Pivetta on the hill for San Diego. First pitch is scheduled for 6:40. The Pacers will try and eliminate the Knicks tonight and move on to face OKC in the NBA Finals. Tip-off for Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals at Madison Square Garden is set for 5 o'clock. And one game note, Karl Anthony Towns is a game time decision with a knee injury. San Diego FC lost last night to Seattle 1-0. The team's next match is Saturday night at Snapdragon Stadium against Austin FC. You can hear the match coverage beginning right here at 7 o'clock on your home for San Diego FC, San Diego Sports 760. Wondering what a personal message with your credit card number has in common with way too many pictures of your dog? Well, they're both private, because on WhatsApp, your personal messages are yours. No one else can see or hear them, not even them. WhatsApp, message privately with everyone.
Getting you all set for that drive home. Let's just start the show. Here's Jon and Jim.
All right, San Diego and Southern California, what's going on? This is hour 3 of Jon and Jim. We're here until 6 p.m. Dave Velasquez, longtime Aztec men's basketball assistant, will join us coming up at 4:30 with more on Miles Bird's decision to return to the Mesa for this upcoming 2025-26 season. And if you missed it earlier, I mentioned that Miles himself will join us tomorrow at 4:30. So we'll get some comments from Miles himself about the decision to return. I think he was quoted yesterday in that one quote I saw as saying he wants to graduate, he wants to continue to improve, and he wants to bring a national championship to San Diego State. So Miles Bird tomorrow, Dave Velasquez coming up at 4:30. Also this hour, we're going to give away a 4-pack of tickets to the San Diego County Fair. We'll get back to the Padres, of course, over the next couple of hours as well. Off today, staying home. They'll get Pittsburgh this weekend. Squandered opportunity yesterday. I thought Alan Sliwa had really good perspective on it. If you missed Alan, you'll hear that coming up at 5:30. But his general point of, well, they've won some games they weren't supposed to win too. And it's a good point. I mean, they did trail 6-0 on Tuesday, and they came all the way back to win that game 8-6. And yeah, they led 6-1 yesterday and lost the game. And how quickly we forget. Well, they won a game very similarly on Tuesday. So you'll hear from Alan coming up at 5:30. And again, Dave Velasquez will join us at 4:30. But typically at 4 p.m. we get to this. So let's get to this.
It's time for the wrap. Presented by Sombrero Mexican Food. Check out their website at sombreromex.com.
Is this going to be the deepest team in San Diego State basketball history?
Maybe some recency bias, and they played 9 in 2023 when they went to the national championship game, and all 9 of those players could have been starters. Truthfully, you got guys like Aguka Rope and Jaden Ledee coming off your bench in 2023, and Adam Seiko was the winningest player in the history of the Mountain West Conference and a brilliant three-point shooter, so you get the point. But I think it has a chance to be. I really do. When you look at what they've done this offseason, and they've retained everyone. They lost one player they could have kept. That was Nick Boyd, very good player. But he's been replaced by a very good player in Sean Newman Jr. And now that Miles Bird is back and Magoon Gwath is back, and they've got a couple of incoming freshmen they're very high on. And they also have a 7-footer that they redshirted last year in Thak Majak, who's going to pay dividends hopefully this year as well. So I think they're very deep. If it's not the deepest team in program history, it's probably right up there. And you got 13 scholarship players, and you could make a case for a lot of them playing a lot of minutes in 2025-26. All right, next question.
Is OKC a lock to win the NBA title?
No, they're not a lock because it's professional sports, and we've seen things happen. There have been NBA, title series where I thought I knew who was going to win, and then it went exactly the opposite way. I think back to always that Pistons-Lakers series like 20 years ago. That shocked me when the Pistons beat the Lakers. So I don't think I would be shocked if, for example, the Pacers beat the Thunder in like a 7-game series. But I think it is unlikely. I really do. The way Oklahoma City plays at home, how good they are defensively, the emergence of their new big three, to me, I'd be surprised if they didn't win it all. A lock would be way too far. I mean, this isn't David Goliath stuff, but I do think they're going to be a pretty significant favorite heading into next week's NBA Finals, which, by the way, don't get underway for 1 week. even if the Pacers win tonight, I don't know if they will or not, at the Garden, even if they win tonight, there's 7 days off.
And you know what's funny about that is we were all complaining about them not having enough days off.
And
now we're going to have to go a week between the finals, and we're going to start bitching about it on like Monday. Oh, what's the long delay in the finals?
I mean, I get it for television. I do. But I do think there should be one caveat, which is if both series end in 5 games or fewer, there should be a secondary start date. Like maybe you can go from a Thursday to a Tuesday. Still plenty of time if that series started Tuesday. You just move it up a day or two. You're still getting primetime television windows. Maybe you just spread your games out a little differently. Having the full week, we've talked about this before, having a full week off really takes the air out of a sport, like when it happens with the World Series, if a team sweeps in a championship series, and then you got to build it back up. And if it's Thunder Pacers, these
they can't afford to let
they're not massive brands. Exactly. Next question.
Who wins tonight's Knicks-Pacers game?
I think this is going to be a really good game. I think the Knicks should win this game. I want to see the, let's see, the Knicks tonight are a 4.5-point favorite. So, you know, I think the Knicks find a way to get it back to Indianapolis. But then again, if you're the Pacers, you don't want to risk it. I mean, in theory, 2 of the last 3 games would be in New York if this thing gets stretched out to a 7th game. So if you're the Pacers, of course, you want to take care of business tonight. But I think the Knicks win a close game tonight at the Garden. What do you have?
2 things.
Yeah.
One, Karl Anthony Towns is a game time decision.
Oh, yeah,
with
he was
injury
really banged up.
because he bumped knees with another player last game, so he's a game time. He might not play. And the other stat that they just put up on ESPN, the Knicks are 0-15 all time when trailing a series 3-1.
Now, 0-15 in the series or in the game?
In the game, when they've trailed 3-1 in a series,
they've lost every series.
Lost every series. They're 0-15.
Yeah, makes sense. It's hard, man. In the NBA, you trail 3-1. It is very unlikely. We've seen some classic examples like LeBron over the Warriors, right, from 3-1 down with Kyrie. But it is a rarity. From 3-1, you feel as if you have a bit of a stranglehold on a series. All right, final question.
Do you feel bad for the Rockies? I don't.
Yeah, you know what? That's going to be my answer too. This is professional sports. They're all paid more handsomely than 99.9% of people in America. And it's a part of it. It's a business and it's a part of sports. When you have really good teams, you can also have really bad teams. Now they're historically bad. And we've seen some historically bad teams recently. White Sox, obviously last year. This Rockies team is so bad that they're the first team in baseball history to lose 21 consecutive series. I mean, that's unbelievable. They're 9-47. But am I sitting there thinking, man, I wish that wasn't happening to this group of Major League Baseball players? No, I'm really not.
I would maybe feel sorry for them if their GM. It wasn't like such. He was a sustainable guy. Was that their GM or their owner?
Man, I think that's their owner.
If he wasn't such a douchebag, I don't. You know, he talked all that S about the Padres and them spending the money and about how, it's not sustainable. You shouldn't spend money and you should just be like us and just sit here and suck and not spend any money. If he didn't do all that, then sure, I might feel a little bad for him. You know, there's times last year, you know, when I wasn't laughing at the White Sox, when I kind of felt bad for how they were doing. And I think it'd be pretty similar with the Rockies if he didn't, you know, run his mouth so much and, you know, so much that he's known as this sustainable guy.
Well, here's the thing. They're playing well recently because they're 1-9 in their last 10, which is probably better than I'm kidding, than their winning percentage on the season. Here's what I would say. I don't feel bad for the Rockies, but I do feel for the team among the other 4 in the NL West that don't play as well against the Rockies as the other 3 teams. So, for example, if the Padres go 11-2 against the Rockies and the Dodgers go 11-2 against the Rockies and the Giants go 11-2 against the Rockies and the D-backs, I'm making this up, go 7-6 against the Rockies, that right there could be the difference. That could be a bit of a death knell potentially to get into the postseason or vie in this division. So far, so good for the Padres. What are they? I think maybe 5-1, something like that against the Rockies. I feel like didn't they have a boneheaded loss in there? They did. After the 21-0 game, they lost that Sunday, but I still think they're 5-1. I'll take 5-1. I know the Rockies suck. I know they're historically bad, but 5 out of 6 is like an 867 winning percentage or something like that. Maybe not that high. 833 winning percentage. If they take the next 5 or 5 of the next 6 from the Rockies in the second half of the year. I think that's good enough if you're the Padres, but you have to capitalize. I mean, this goes back to our point from yesterday. When you're playing bad teams, and the Marlins are nowhere near as bad as the Rockies because no one is as near as bad as the Rockies. Like, to put in perspective, the White Sox have twice as many wins as the Rockies. They have 18, and the Rockies have only 9. But when you're playing the Marlins, when you're playing the Pirates, when you're playing the Rockies, when you're playing the White Sox this year, and the Orioles, by the way, are 19-36. A team that has been very good in the AL East the last 2 years. Somehow they're 19-36. So it's those teams where we've talked about this so much with the Padres over the years. Can you play well against bad teams? And the jury is out because the season isn't over, but that's going to be critically important for them to get to where they want to get.
I think with Baltimore, I think, the story's out on them now to where they can't sneak up on anybody anymore. Everyone knows that, they got all those young talent. They're still loaded in the farm system. And, it reminds me of that year when Milwaukee brought up Prince Fielder and Ryan Braun and Corey Hart and Ricky Weeks and all those guys. And the first year they brought them up, they kind of caught everyone by surprise because they weren't expecting anything because, they were just starting all these rookies. And then after a year or two, they were established and they couldn't, sneak up on anybody anymore. And I think that's what happened with, Baltimore. You got, was it Hunter, what's his name, got on the cover of the show this year, or Gunnar Henderson.
Yeah.
He got on the cover of the show, and they're not sneaking up on anybody anymore.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And again, like this, it also puts in perspective what the Padres are doing right now, because there's no guarantee when you walk into a year and you're supposed to be good, you're good. In fact, you can be bad. Baltimore is a classic example in 2025, and shoot, the 2023 Padres, who had Juan Soto for a full year and missed the postseason, are pretty. Now, they weren't 19-36 bad, but they were, below 500 for a bulk of that year bad. So you kind of never know what you're walking into. All right, we have much more on the Padres and what happened yesterday down at Petco Park. On the other side, was it just one of those it's baseball days or not? We'll explain coming up on the other side. Plus, Dave Velasquez, San Diego State men's basketball assistant, with more on the news of Miles Bird's return to the Mesa. And later this hour, your chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to the San Diego County Fair at the Del Mar Fairgrounds. This is Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760, and live on the iHeartRadio app. AM radio keeps vital voices accessible. Congress can secure its future, but we need your help. Text AM to 52886 now to support keeping AM radio in cars. Tell your member of Congress to pass legislation now and keep AM radio in cars. Standard message and data rates apply. Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760. Dave Velasquez, excited to catch up with Coach Velasquez coming up in about 10 minutes with more on Miles Bird's decision to return to San Diego State, setting the stage for just unbelievable expectations for the Aztecs heading into 2025-26. And if you missed it earlier, I mentioned Miles will join us tomorrow at 4:30 right here on San Diego Sports 760. In addition to all of this, later in the hour, around 4:45, let's give away a 4-pack of tickets to the San Diego County Fair at the Del Mar Fairgrounds. You were telling me earlier that you have something you're going to share about the fair coming up during Jim's back page. This is now Brent's back page later in today's show.
Yes, involving food.
All right, so that's a good tease.
Some semifinalists for some fair foods.
That's a very good tease. Yes. That's a very good tease. So stay tuned for that coming up during Brent's back page, which is normally Jim's back page. All right, so obviously we started today's show talking about the Padres squandering an opportunity, which is what it was. I mean, they led yesterday 6-1. Then they trailed. Then Gavin Sheets hits this massive home run. How many massive home runs can Gavin Sheets hit in losses? Because he hit one yesterday, a 2-out, 2-run, go-ahead home run. Those do not grow on trees. Like, you don't get that every single day, especially this Padres team that hasn't had the most slug or power this year. They've had some with Toddy and Sheets and Merrill at times and Machado here recently. But to hit a 2-out, 2-run, go-ahead home run as late as the bottom of the 7th inning and lose a game, and this comes within a week of him hitting 2 home runs and having 5 RBIs in a loss against Toronto. I don't really know what to say about yesterday other than I do to some extent understand it. And to some extent, I understand the frustration. So it's like I'm riding both sides of the fence on this one. Over 162, there's some days that are harder than others. Not because you're facing the Marlins, but because of the way in which they had used their bullpen. So when you have pieces unavailable to you because they've been used too much, you can't pitch guys, relievers 5 times in 6 days. You're not going to do that in the regular season. You rarely pitch them 4 times in 5 days. Oftentimes you don't pitch them 3 consecutive days. So guys are down, and then you run into a little bit of trouble because you don't have Michael King, and now Kyle Hart is out there and he can't give you 5 innings. And then Jason Adam wasn't Jason Adam yesterday, and all of a sudden you look up and there was Wandy Peralta on the mound, trying to protect a 1-run lead in the 8th inning, and he was unable to do it. So part of it is, listen, even when you don't have your A team, you still need to be able to count on guys like Peralta or Matsui. They still have to find a way sometimes to come through. And for whatever reason, yesterday they didn't. I also would say rest assured that hopefully moving forward, they're not going to be in this position each and every night. They're hopefully going to have a rested bullpen more often than not. And then, of course, the postseason, assuming they get there, is completely different than what we saw play out yesterday. What happened yesterday is something that only really happens in a regular season and doesn't really occur in a postseason. But, I mean, there is some head scratching that goes on. When you blow a 5-run lead at home with your bullpen at Petco Park to the Marlins, that shouldn't happen. I think 99 out of 100 times a 5-run lead halfway through a game at home against a team as average or below average as the Marlins, you should win. And I have said that a couple times this year. I think there's been a couple games this year where I've said they have a 99% chance of winning and they lose. Now, maybe they've had a game or two where they had a 99% chance of losing, like Tuesday. 6-0 deficit, you probably lose, 98% of the time, 99% of the time, even though it was the first inning, and they did win that game. So just kind of my 2 cents on it. I'm not going to go crazy over it. If they had, if the record was opposite what it is right now and they were 8 under as opposed to 8 games over 500, then I think we would go crazy. That would be a huge squandered opportunity yesterday, but they are still 8 games over 500. They still have the Pirates coming here this weekend, and they've still gotten off to a better start, Brent, than they got off to a year ago.
Well, it makes a difference too that, if they didn't, take 2 out of 3 from Atlanta, it would have kind of made a big difference for me, opposed to, now they're going to play, Pittsburgh. The Marlins series should have been a sweep, but they didn't. But it would have been worse if they would have, lost the Braves series and then slid into the Marlins and then had yesterday happen and then potentially have that going into Pittsburgh. Because this is just, like we've been talking, this is just a stretch of winnable games, even with, their pitching issues and everything else. They should still be able to win these games. It's not like, the Dodgers aren't showing up yet. They got a couple weeks where they got to worry about that. But, they especially with, not having to deal with Paul Skeens again.
A good point. Yeah, so you bring up a good point. So Skeens yesterday, for all the I want to see Paul Skeens at Petco Park fans, Skeens yesterday shoved at Arizona, 6 2/3 scoreless innings. He has a 2.1 ERA, among the best in baseball. And, facing him creates challenges. Clearly, he's one of the best pitchers in the sport. So by avoiding him, does that mean maybe you pick up one more win in the series? If the answer is yes, that's great for me. This is one of those series where, you basically, there are no must-win series in May, but I don't know if you can afford not to win it with what's to come on the other side. Like, you're not going to feel good. They're 4-8 in their last 12 games. I'm talking about the Padres. If you do not win the Pirates home series, how would you feel good about at Arizona, at Milwaukee, home for LA? You get the point. At Dodger Stadium, at Arizona, whatever it is. I might have messed that up, but you get the point. A 17-game gauntlet with 14 on the road, the only 3 at home against the Dodgers. If you don't win this series, and I think they will, but if you don't win the series, how could you feel good? I mean, you're 4-8 now in your last 12. If you lose it, let's say, you're 5-10 over 15-game stretch heading into that gauntlet. So, of course, it's not must-have, but how can you not have it considering what's coming up here over the next couple of weeks is what I would say.
And you don't want them to fall into that thing that they did a couple years ago where it's just like, oh yeah, we're playing, the best teams in baseball, we win. And then when we play the basement teams, we play down to the level of our competition because we just think we got it in the bag, and then we lose, i.e. that one year when we couldn't beat the Rockies to save our lives, but we could beat everybody else, but just not the Rockies.
All right, on the other side, Dave Velasquez back with us on Jon Jim, longtime assistant to Steve Fisher and Brian Dutcher, was with Miles Bird at the Combine. Miles Bird returning to the Mesa. What does it mean for the Aztecs in 2025 and 2026, the 25-26 season coming up this fall? Dave Velasquez will join us on the other side. And by the way, the programming announcement, Miles Bird will join us tomorrow at 4:30 right here on Jon Jim, San Diego Sports 760, and live on the iHeartRadio app. Hey guys, it is Jon and Jim again for the all-new Jamul Casino Resort, the Players Place. Join them coming up Saturday, June 14th, just a couple of weeks away. Their Players Party. Get ready to kick off summer in style with the annual event. It includes $20 in free play for all from 6 a.m. to midnight, plus free food for everyone, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. in Jive Lounge. It's an event you're not going to want to miss. Kick off summer at Jamul. Plus, that weekend, Sunday, June 15th, Father's Day brunch at Prime Cut, 10:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Show Dad how much he means to you with a wonderful brunch at Prime Cut, 10:30 a.m., 3:30 p.m., featuring lobster tails, hand-carved prime rib, and more. Make his day extra special with a meal he'll love. Plus, coming up Saturday, June 7th at 7 p.m., UFC 316. You can catch all the action at Tony Gwynn Sports Pub, Loft 94, or their poker room at the all-new Jamul Casino Resort, the Players Place.
This report is sponsored by Dairy Queen. The Padres are off today. They're back at it tomorrow to start a weekend series at Petco against the Pirates. It's going to be Mitch Keller going for the Pirates and Nick Pivetta on the hill for the Padres. First pitch is scheduled for 6:40. Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals is tonight. The Pacers will try and eliminate the Knicks and move on to face OKC in the finals. Tip-off for Game 5 from Madison Square Garden is set for 5 o'clock. One game note, Karl Anthony Towns is a game-time decision with a knee injury. Last night, San Diego FC lost to Seattle 1-0. The team's next match is Saturday night at Snapdragon against Austin FC. You can hear that match. Pre-game coverage starts right here at 7 o'clock on your home for San Diego FC, San Diego Sports 760. Hurry into DQ for their sauce and toss chicken strip baskets with flavor from top, bottom, and everywhere in between. Try them today in Honey Barbecue or New Buffalo. Only at DQ. Happy tastes good. Only at participating Dairy Queen locations.
All right, Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760. Aztec fans thrilled with what has transpired here this offseason. The news we get yesterday, Miles Bird will return to the Mesa for his redshirt junior season. And it's great to once again catch up with Dave Velasquez, San Diego State longtime successful men's basketball assistant, back with us right now on Jon and Jim. And by the way, the programming announcement is that Miles will join us tomorrow at 4:30 as well, right here on Jon and Jim. But Coach, I always appreciate you taking time. I want to hear it from your perspective, because you were with Miles a lot throughout this process, including in Chicago at the Combine just a couple of weeks ago. So what was the process like from your seat to watch this all play out and then get the news that Miles would be returning for another season?
Yeah, it was fun to watch, and it was educational for me as a coach. First time at the Combine. Obviously, I've had other guys there before. But obviously just super proud of Miles, and not just what everybody was able to see throughout the games. You know, I haven't watched the games on film, but, you know, I heard that kind of sometimes they break away and show the interview, but everything Miles was doing on the floor was just phenomenal in terms of just being who he is, which is an all around, first of all, team player, makes everyone on the floor better. But just defensively, he was just a monster. And then going 5 for 11 from 3, I think he had a 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, which is outstanding. I mean, he played really, really well. So obviously that helps, you know, kind of the experience out there is when your guy's playing so well. And I, you know, people think, I mean, we were really rooting for Miles, and I don't think people understand how important it is for us to be a man of our word. And, you know, a lot of times we use in our recruiting is kind of your dreams become ours. You know, Coach Lessig brought that line to us, and we've lived that for a long time. And, you know, we wanted Miles' dream to come true, which is to play in the NBA. So we were really rooting for him to play well and go through the process. And one of the things I will say, it was really cool to be at the Combine and have so many of the people in the NBA that Miles had interviewed for. I believe he interviewed for almost half the NBA, if not even more. And almost every single one of them would walk up to me and say he was one of the most impressive players we met with, if not the most impressive person. Just his energy in the room, his intelligence, his IQ about the game of basketball, knowing the history of basketball, understanding basketball, but also understanding, you know, what winning is, what's a good culture, you know, what he's all about as a person, you know, his family, his really small circle that he has. You know, Miles is just impressed way beyond the basketball court, which is probably, to me as his coach, the thing I was the most proud of.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. He's a terrific young man, in addition to being just an outstanding basketball player, as Aztec fans have seen. Dave Velasquez with us right now on Jon and Jim. If we are able to fast forward, I want to get to what he's going to mean for the Aztecs this upcoming year. But fast forwarding, what is it about Miles that you see in the future translating so well? Not just you, obviously, and the coaches, but evaluators, NBA teams. What is it about his game that you think one day will translate very well to the next level?
You know, it's his do it all. You know, not a lot of guys can at that size can do what he can do. You know, you talk about offensively, he's a really good passer. He's a guy who can really cut. He has a high IQ for that, for the timing of his cuts. He can finish around the rim with his athleticism, and he can shoot the ball. He can shoot the ball consistently next year. I mean, it's a kind of a surefire deal that he's going to be in a much better position next year for the draft. And then defensively, I mean, he's a guy who can guard you one-on-one. He can block shots when he's guarding the ball. He can block shots when he's guarding off the ball. When it's not his man, he has to come over and help. And then obviously his anticipation for steals is really impressive. His ability to kind of read plays before they happen is really his, to me, his number one strength defensively. Now, it looks at times that he gambles a little bit and he jumps fast lanes, but his ability to just get his hands on so many balls is so impressive. And so, again, he's fitting the mold of this new NBA, with size. He checks all the boxes. And I think that's a huge thing, because that's a big deal. I always tell our guys, when you go into training camps at these NBA teams, and, in San Diego, we've had so many, whether it's at USD, UCSD, or San Diego State, have so many NBA teams come in. There's just a look and feel about certain positions. And in Miles' positions, outside his physicality, but his length, his size, he can really fit in at that position. Now, obviously, he's got to put on some more weight. But other than that, he looks like those guys.
I was going to ask you kind of what a next step would be. There's so much growth in college from one year to the next. When you look at Miles, and he's obviously gone through this process and worked out with some of the top players in the country as well over the course of this spring. When you think of a next step in his continued development, what does that look like for him over the next 12 months?
I mean, first of all, it's just sheer, weight. I mean, just pure weight, eating better, finding, probably, and everything goes together. It's just a whole different. People got to realize he's still 20 years old. He's growing into his body, if you will. But I think just, this is kind of the time going into your fourth year of college where you get to really, kind of find out what works for you and what doesn't. And, he's going to have a chance to really work on his body, put on weight in the weight room. He's going to live in the weight room. He's going to live in the gym, but he's going to, eat a lot more and sleep a lot better and, really focus on his body. I would say is the first thing over those next 12 months. If you want to talk just basketball wise, it's just being more consistent. I think that's one thing, guys that study him really watch, and that's something he'll continue to work on. But it's one of those things that you're going to work on it every day and it won't show for 7 months from now, 6 months from now. And so it's got to be something that it starts in June and you don't kind of get the fruits of your labor until it's at the end of until the season comes around, of all that hard work that you put in over the summer. So it's those two things I think were probably the biggest things that he will focus on. And I am 100% confident that he will get both of those jobs done.
Yeah, really good insight for Aztec fans. We're with Dave Velasquez, San Diego State men's basketball assistant. So, there's like a saying maybe in baseball, it's like there's no such thing as too much starting pitching or too many good hitters in your lineup. Like it kind of works itself out. It's better than the alternative. You guys are heading into next year with 13 scholarship players, which is a big number for you and your staff and your team over the last handful or more years. How does that all sort itself out as you prepare yourself for the upcoming season, having this much experience and talent on one team?
I used to think that way too, that it's, sometimes it can be too much, but at the end of the day, competition brings the best out of guys. And at the end of the day, you can't predict the future. So if you have those two, I mean, there's just stuff that happens, unfortunately last year it was Reese Waters.
Sure.
There's stuff that happens. So you need depth at almost all positions. And also, you need guys that, you got to have guys. Yeah, they say did they get how much better did they get? Who took the bigger steps? And we'll find that out. You got to be. Again, back to be just being the man of our word. We got to make sure that the competition is going to be there. Coach Dutcher's never promised a starting spot in his entire career, and he's not going to start today in this team. You're going to have to work for everything that you earn, work for everything, all the minutes you get, and also understand that there's other guys that are going to want those minutes from you if you're getting more. And I think that's a good. At the end of the day, all great teams have had that. We really had that with our last national championship team. I mean, it was unbelievable. And guys that, would step up and maybe a starter now sits the last 4 or 5 minutes of a game, because that other guy's playing better. And it just brought out the best in all our guys. And so we're looking forward to the competition, and we'll let it shake out how it's going to shake out. And the guys will decide that, not the coaches.
Dave Velasquez with us right now on Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760. So I remember last year, a younger team and all that emphasis. Dutch would always talk about it, you and the other coaches as well. Like, we need to get this team ready to go from day one with what we have early. You played Gonzaga, Houston, Creighton, Oregon, all in the first couple of weeks of the season. Plus, you didn't have the same level of college experience that maybe you have on this year's team. So will the summer into fall workouts and practice schedule look similar or different now that you have a different looking, more experienced team heading into the upcoming year?
Well, we're hoping it'll look different, and we won't know until we get everybody back in early July. But we really had to start at square one. I mean, literally step one last year from just even our terminology. We was the first time in that I can remember that we've done defense in the summer. We couldn't wait till September like we could with the other teams. So with that being said, I know that this year we'll still do defense again. We still have 5 new guys to get them, going and get them comfortable. But how much of that do we do? How fast can we jump into competing? How quick can guys pick up things, remember things? And again, it's like anything else. I always laugh, the habits are habits, and those aren't just, they don't just go with you every single day. I always joke with Jordan Shackle, who is one of my favorite guys I've ever had to coach. And the first time I watched him play in Summer League, so on every catch, John, we say high hands. Mm-hmm. So his hands comes up on the defensive closeout. Well, Jordan was playing in Summer League. It was only like 4 months after he had done that for 4 straight years, every single day. And the first time a guy caught it, he didn't have high hands. I just said, if you don't do it every day, those habits start to go away a little bit. And so for us, it's, starting to build back those habits with the veterans, get the new guys up to speed. But to answer your question, I don't know. Our summer is going to be a lot more offense than defense, but at the same time, we will do defense this summer. But we really want to become a real firepower somehow on offense. And that's going to take some time, and that's going to be a lot of trial and error, because defensively, we know what works. We know the habits we need to form. And offensively, it depends on the type of team you have and what those guys have kind of brought with them. And then how can we add their skill set and what they do best to our program.
I forget if I asked you last time or not, and we had you on probably a few weeks ago. It might have been a little longer than that. But the Sean Newman acquisition, because you've retained so much, but the one player that did depart that had eligibility was Nick Boyd. But then you go out and you add a young player from Southern California that is coming off just a terrific year. Sean Newman Jr. with all of the assists, 3rd most assists in college basketball a year ago. Can you tell us about Sean's game and how it fits in with all of these scoring pieces that are going to be around him here this upcoming year?
Well, you're hoping that Sean just makes everyone else's game not just better, but easier. Mm-hmm. That he can put the ball in spots for guys that, makes him more successful. I mean, he's 3rd in the country in assists. So to me, if you're 3rd in the country in assists at that last program, when you come here, and that's what you do best, we're going to do nothing but just encourage that. And the other guys are on our team are just going to encourage you to continue to do that. And for him to just, find guys for easy shots, find guys for easy layups, whether it's in transition, whether it's in the half court, I think Sean, adds to another guy who will handle the ball a lot, who will be able to find others. He's not the only one. I mean, Taj, who showed it last year at times, can really pass. The freshman and Elsie Harrington can really pass. I mean, so we have other guys. I mean, Reese Waters and Miles Bird both really have a high IQ of knowing how to play. So, and it goes on and on and on. I mean, we have so many guys, BJ Davis, it's going to be great for our guys to have that type of competition every day. But to have just other guys around you find each other is going to be, I think it's going to make our offense look a lot better. I think it'll make it flow a lot smoother. And I also think it makes everyone better.
And then lastly for you, because obviously Aztec fans are so excited to have not just obviously Miles back, but Magoon Guath back. But Magoon, had the earlier off-season surgery. How's his progress coming so far? Like you said, we still have months before the start of the year, but what's his spring into summer look like to this point?
Before I answer your question, John, I got to tell you a quick story. We were at the Padres game as a coaching staff yesterday when Miles had basically called us and announced that he is coming back. And we were in the suite with a bunch of really generous donors and fans. And, as we were walking out of the stadium, a lot of fans are coming up and talking to Coach Setzer how, excited they are. I just want to be really clear with the fans. We are just equally as excited to get all these guys back. It is a very shared mutual excitement to get guys like Magoon Guath and Pharaoh Compton. And I mean, literally all the guys we retained, that to me is the thing I'm the most proud of, pump my chest up about. Throw my jersey out like I just dunked on somebody and show the San Diego State on my chest. Like, we are able, and our guys believe in us and they believe in this program. They understand the love they get here, that they all were able to stay, turn down more money at other programs. To me, that's the story of this year's transfer portal. And it's not about the guys going out, and we loved all the guys coming in, but to have so many guys coming back like Magoon, who to answer your question now, he's doing great. He's walking, he's looking bigger. I just saw him yesterday for probably the first time in a couple of weeks. I went from the combine to Wichita to vacation in Cabo with the family. So I was gone from San Diego for 13 days. I started getting a little itchy. 13 days away from San Diego for me is not the best thing in mind. This is my favorite place in the world. So, but it's I saw Magoon yesterday. Looks a lot stronger already. His arms are looking ripped. Obviously, with the leg stuff, a lot of his rehab actually is kind of lower body strength, is to make sure that those quads and hamstrings and his hips continue to get stronger, so that knee will just continue to get better. So it's actually going to hopefully work itself out. Everything right now is not just on schedule. You can honestly say it might be even ahead of schedule. So Magoon just has to stay on that path. And, every day is a new day, and he has to make sure that he stays working as hard as he has at the beginning part of this rehab process.
Amazing insight. We always appreciate you taking time for us. And again, congratulations. Again, there's so much work that goes into it. I think fans just kind of see the end result, but the work that's been done by yourself and the staff and this team to put this team in a position where people have these expectations for the upcoming year. Just congratulations on the work that's been done this far. Thanks as always for hopping on, and let's do it again later on this summer.
John, appreciate you having me. And like I always tell you, there's nobody's higher expectations than the ones we have in our office. So we get it. We understand it. We appreciate the love, and go Aztec.
Appreciate you, Dave. Dave Velasquez, San Diego State men's basketball assistant. All right. Call right now if you want 4 free tickets to the San Diego County Fair. That's right. 4 free tickets to the San Diego County Fair. Call 877-767-4760 right now. First 2 callers will be contestants for trivia, but you need to call right now. 4 free tickets to the San Diego County Fair. 877-767-4760. Call right now. This is Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760, and live on the iHeartRadio app. All right, Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760 here until 6 p.m. If you missed Alan Sliwa with more on the NBA postseason, the Padres, Aztecs basketball, you'll hear that coming up at 5:30. All right, we are playing for a 4-pack of tickets to the San Diego County Fair. Let's get to it.
All right, 3 questions, 2 contestants, 1 lifeline. Today's 2 contestants, we have Chris and we have Efren. Chris, you called in first. Normally that means you get your choice of Jon or Jim, but since Jim is soft and in Hawaii eating pork roast or whatever the hell he's doing over there today, you will both have Jon as your lifeline. But Chris, since you called in first, you will get to go first. Okay, you guys got it?
Got it.
All right,
okay.
so you both have me, and Brent's going to ask the question, and then we're going to go back and forth with the trivia. And turn your radios down.
Yes, please. All right, guys. All right. OKC is back in the finals for the first time since 2012. Today's question: name these 6 different franchises that have lost the NBA finals since 2014. So not teams that have won the championship since 2014. We're looking for the 6 teams that have lost the NBA finals since 2014.
Okay, so 6 franchises, right? So some of them could have lost more than once.
Yes.
Okay, so we're looking for the 6 franchises that have lost at least one time in the NBA finals since 2014, and it's going to be Chris that goes first.
Yeah.
Each of you have a lifeline. Chris, what do you got to get us started?
Oh man, I'm just gonna go off the top of my head. We're gonna go with Golden State.
Golden
LA.
State. Oh, just one at a time. Just one at a time. We go back and forth. So your first guess is Golden State,
okay.
and you are correct, which means now Efren is up with a chance to tie it up, and both of you still have a lifeline. But Efren, your turn. Who do you have as a team that's lost in the NBA Finals since 2014, other than Golden State?
Celtics.
Boston on the list. All right, well done, which means we go back to Chris for round 2.
Charlotte.
In the NBA Finals, the Charlotte Hornets. That is not going to be. Charlotte's never been in the NBA Finals, right?
No.
Okay, so
that was wrong.
That opens the door for Efren to take a lead here in round 2. Efren, what do you have?
Mavericks.
Dallas Mavericks, right, with Luka last year, correct. All right, that means, Chris, you need a correct answer here to stay alive, and you do have a lifeline.
Oh, what's my lifeline?
Brent, nobody has said the Cavs, right? I will go with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Did you take that, Chris?
I'll take that.
All right, so we are tied up, which means Efren now can walk it off with the correct answer here.
Phoenix Suns.
Phoenix for the win. Yeah, they lost to the Bucks. It is over. That's right. Well done by Efren. Charlotte was a little out of left field for Chris. I don't know the furthest Charlotte's ever gone in the postseason. Second round? There's no way they've been in a conference finals.
I want to say maybe in the Alonzo Mourning, Larry Johnson days, they might have went to the conference finals.
Maybe.
And then got
one time
spanked.
I'm looking Charlotte Hornets Wikipedia page. Conference titles 0, division titles 0. But have they ever played in a, who even cares? They were the Bobcats, remember, for 10 years?
Yeah. That was when MJ ran them.
Yeah. All right. Who did we miss any teams? Yeah, we missed one, right?
Yes, there's one left.
Who else? Oh, did we say Miami?
No, that's who it was.
The Miami Heat.
Yep.
Yeah, the Miami Heat. All right. There's your list of 6 teams that have lost in the NBA Finals since 2014. Trying to do the deep dive here on the Hornets postseason history. It's not very good, is what I know. Yeah, whatever. Who cares? Nobody cares. All right. Congratulations to Efren. You have won again a 4-pack of tickets to the San Diego County Fair at the Del Mar Fairgrounds, June 11th through July 6th. It's the biggest bash of the summer in San Diego, the best deal in town. Celebrate again with thrilling rides, challenging games, mouth-watering food, incredible exhibits, top-notch entertainment during our summer Pet-tacular. That's the theme, a pet theme in 2025 at the San Diego County Fair For tickets and information, go to sdfair.com. That's sdfair.com. All right. In the 5 o'clock hour, Alan Sliwa on the NBA postseason, the Lakers offseason, the Padres, San Diego State basketball, and more. We'll turn our attention back to the Padres to start the final hour of Jon and Jim, as well as they look ahead to the Pittsburgh Pirates this weekend. This begins the most daunting stretch of their season, not the Pirates, but what's ahead. 26 games in 27 days, including 7 games against the Dodgers, road trips to Arizona and San Francisco. So we'll look ahead on the other side, plus Alan Sliwa at 5:30. Brent's back page later in the 5 o'clock hour. We are here until 6. Don't go anywhere. Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760 and live on the iHeartRadio app. All right, maxed out on credit cards, struggling with high interest debt. You could pay it all off in days with Loan Pronto's Rapid Equity Loan. Hey guys, it is Schaefer, and get cash out now without touching your low rate first mortgage. No appraisals, no waiting, no BS. The Rapid Equity Loan program at Loan Pronto is amazing. One Loan Pronto client just got $300,000 approved in under 24 hours, paying off their debt, renovating their kitchen, cutting their monthly expenses by $1,800. A huge turnaround. Loan Pronto, instant approvals, low rates, no hard credit pull up front. Listen, your home equity, it's yours. Use it. Get cash to consolidate your debt down to one easy low monthly payment. Call Loan Pronto now for a free instant appraisal for your home and see how much cash you can get today. Call now to start the conversation. The number 619-207-4336 or loanpronto.com. That's 619-207-4336. Get debt relief now at loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781 on approved credit, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
This report is sponsored by WhatsApp. The Padres had the day off today. They're back at it tomorrow against the Pirates at Petco Park. It's going to be Mitch Keller going for the Pirates and Nick Pivetta on the hill for San Diego. First pitch is scheduled for 6:40. The Pacers and the Knicks are about to tip off here momentarily at Madison Square Garden. The Pacers are going to try and eliminate the Knicks and face OKC in the NBA Finals. Karl Anthony Towns is a game time decision. No word yet on if he is going to play tonight. San Diego FC lost last night to Seattle 1-0. The team's next match is Saturday night at Snapdragon against Austin FC. You can hear match coverage beginning at 7:00 right here on your home for San Diego FC at San Diego Sports 760. Wondering what a personal message with your credit card number has in common with way too many pictures of your dog? Well, they're both private, because on WhatsApp, your personal messages are yours. No one else can see or hear them, not even them. WhatsApp, message privately with everyone.
Getting you all set for that drive home. Let's just start the show. Here's Jon and Jim.
All right, San Diego and Southern California, what's going on? This is the final hour of Jon and Jim. And ahead, you'll hear from Alan Slewa, friend of the show. Great NBA resource, but he's also a San Diegan. So we'll talk Padres and SDSU hoops with Alan Slewa coming up at 5:30. Plus, we'll have Brent's back page for you coming up later this hour as well. Jim back Monday, in theory.
Yay.
I don't know if we'll be driving from Honolulu or if we'll be flying or, yeah, in theory, Jim returns Monday.
Is he going to pull a thing like when he was in Mexico to where it's just like, oh yeah, my flight gets in Monday morning at 11:30 and you know, I'll be here right for when the show starts.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. It was like, whenever that was, like a year or two ago, did he go to Cabo?
Yeah. It was like last year.
He went to Cabo and he's like, I get back Monday at 2 to Tijuana, so I'll be fine for the 3:00 show. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You don't fly to an airport in another country and get through customs and drive to work in like 40 minutes. So, surprise, he missed the show. His flight was delayed. And he's like, I can't believe this. Like, my flight's. I'm like, dude, you gave yourself like a 5-minute window on an international flight. And by the way, what kind of preparation is that for a show to give yourself like 7 minutes and just be like, I'll just race in and maybe get there on time and do the show? That's all you need to know about Jim. That is the amount of preparation he puts into the show. Now, the good news is he somehow is able to just wing it, to his credit. Like that is a skill. That is a skill that I don't
master ad-lib.
I don't necessarily share that with Jim, but Jim just says, screw it. Let me do it my way. But he will be back on Monday, and I'm sure he'll be fully prepared to talk about everything that's going on over the last week in San Diego sports. Now, we'll get back to the Padres, but tonight at MSG, is it the end of an era? They may make it out to be. So this potentially is the last NBA game ever on TNT. But remember, this team that people are so passionate about, I'm not talking about a basketball team. I'm talking about Ernie Johnson, Kenny Smith, Chuck, Shaq. That group is not going anywhere. They're under contract to do Inside the NBA from the same set in Atlanta. They'll just put a different logo in the corner. It'll be broadcast on ESPN, but it will be the same show. Now, could ESPN screw that up? Maybe. Do they throw Stephen A. Smith into that? Don't put it past them.
Don't speak that into existence.
I hope not, because what they have has clearly worked, and NBA fans have such an affinity for it. So, okay, yeah, the Turner aspect of it might be coming to an end, but the Inside the NBA part of it isn't coming to an end. And by the way, we don't even know if the series ends tonight. They could be doing this all again for a Game 6 and or a Game 7. But did Shaq have words for the viewers tonight to kick off Inside the NBA?
Not to kick it off, but he just interrupted and he had a message for the fans.
Should have run into them in the dinner room, that kind of thing, and we cross paths all the time. Say it.
There's always saying when something passes away, something is reborn. And yes, it is the ending of the Inside the NBA on TNT, but it's the new beginning for us. I'm glad we're still together on whatever network we go to, and whatever network we come into, we bring in the pain. Just letting you know right now. Okay, I know everybody's sad that, it ain't gonna be the show. The show is still here, baby. You can never kill the 4 horsemen. We coming, and we coming to take spots. We coming to kick ass, and we coming to take names.
Take names.
We doing it our way.
Hey, I love it. Let's go play.
So,
I'm ready to go,
you got
baby.
it. So, you know, already,
ready, baby.
So, you know, all the sadness about that show, we coming with a whole brand new show, and we don't care who in our way. We coming to kick ass and take names.
Oh, I can play with this. That's why I want to play with him. Can I be Ric Flair?
Yes.
All right. What's interesting there
Parsley wants to be Ric Flair.
I love how they keep talking about like wherever we're going, we're going to bring it. They know where they're going. The deal was signed like a half a year ago. They're going to ESPN. They pretend like this thing is still like up in the air and ending of an era. And if it was, it was. Like if the show is actually ending, I'd buy it. Like if this is the last you see of this group together, like nothing's really changing. Yeah, TNT, Turner, they've had basketball a long time. But like all good things come to an end. I remember back when NBC had the NBA and now they're getting it back. Or we remember before, like, I remember when the NFL first went to Fox. Like this is just, it's how life works. Things change.
For me, I'm just wondering how much stuff they're going to get away with compared to what TNT let them get away with.
Right.
In a way, it's kind of a reverse scenario of, I remember, when I was in college, like most people, I was really big into like the late night talk shows. I was like a big Conan O'Brien guy. And when Conan went from NBC to TBS being on cable, he could get away with a lot more stuff from standards and practices opposed to what he could on NBC. So I'm just worried not so much worried, but I wonder if they're going to have as much slack to kind of do what they want, so to speak, on the new network opposed to what TNT did, where they just kind of let them do what they want.
Remember what I said earlier about the NCAA tournament. If you don't kill a golden goose, when you've got a good thing, be careful to tweak it. So my message for ESPN would be careful doing anything, because what they have been doing has been working. And a little bit like the opposite, by the way. Like Stern was known for pushing the envelope on terrestrial radio. But then once you make the leap to satellite radio, some of that envelope pushing is almost expected. Therefore, it doesn't have the same friction necessarily with the audience. What you're describing is actually something that's the opposite, where Turner is a cable network. ESPN is as well, but they're owned by like Disney Company, and these games are broadcast on ABC. So you don't really want to go in the opposite direction. You're right. Some of the brilliance of it is they speak off the cuff. They share what's on their minds. They do it unabashedly, and they do it again, like they just do it, and they're not scared to say what's on their mind, and you give them credit for that.
Yeah, is ESPN gonna be like, look, Chuck, it was funny, but you guys stop talking about San Antonio women. We don't want to hear it anymore. I mean, You can't do that anymore. Because remember, he'd always bring that up all the time, and it was funny. But like I said, it's one of those things that Disney and ESPN might be like, no, we don't do that here.
Yeah, the thing to me that worries me is what I said initially. If you're ESPN, because you know how ESPN works, they're always trying to push their talent like all around the network, right? So you're going to see Pat McAfee on social. You're going to see him maybe on Game Day. You're going to see him on SportsCenter. You're going to see him on a show. Same thing with Stephen A. Smith. Don't force Pat McAfee into Inside the NBA. Don't force Stephen A. Smith into Inside the NBA. Let Inside the NBA stand on its own. Listen, if you think Stephen A. is doing good content or Pat McAfee's doing good content, keep doing what you're doing, ESPN. But don't force these personalities into something that's already working, because we know this too in radio, that you tweak with a combination and you could really do significant damage.
I would be worried too that, because this is kind of ESPN's MO the last couple of years, is, hey, our thing is we're going to do the shows where we just scream at each other all the time. And that's what we consider content these days, to where they'd be like, oh, you guys aren't screaming at each other enough. We're going to throw Kendrick Perkins in the mix because we know you guys hate him. And
yeah, so let's see how you guys do it.
Yeah, it's not going to be good content. You guys are just going to sit there and scream and shout and argue at each other. But that's what we like here at ESPN now, is just screaming and yelling.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I understand this. Like, I'm trying to compare it to something. If the NBA was leaving ESPN tonight as opposed to Turner, I don't know what kind of affinity there really is for the NBA on ESPN. I think people have really taken a liking to Mike Breen over the years. I mean, he's one of the best. Okay. But I don't think anyone's gonna be like, man, I'm really gonna miss that studio show. Man, Bob Myers, the former GM of the Warriors, man, that really hit home with me. And Stephen A. yelling about the Knicks. So like if this was the last night of the NBA and ESPN, we'd be like, all right, whatever. But there is something about like the Turner product and it being like off the beaten path on cable television, because you don't always think Turner for professional sports, but you have with the NBA. So I get the nostalgia, I guess is my point.
Well, and there's no nostalgia for, NBA on ESPN. When it starts on NBC here next season, there's going to be nostalgia, from Round Ball Rock being played again to just, the old logos. And, I'm going to, get nostalgia feels just from that, that was my childhood, was all the games on NBC on the weekends and everything else that they don't do anymore. So, ESPN's, like you said, if tonight was the last game of the NBA on ESPN, I probably wouldn't miss it. I'd rather watch it on NBC, honestly.
What was the show? What was the show we watched as kids, right?
NBA Inside Stuff.
Inside Stuff.
With Ahmad Rashad, and
that was
it Summer, she was a swimmer. Was it Summer Sanders? Was her name?
Maybe. I forget. But man, you talk about nostalgia. You talk about growing up in the 80s and 90s, and you're going to vividly remember that show. And I thought it was really catered well to like a younger audience, right? It was like for kids, which I thought really served the NBA well. I mean, you still think about some of this stuff. Like if I had one message for sports leagues, not that anyone's asking me, we're fortunate because we're adults in the West, we can watch sporting events, right? Because they're on at 5, 6 p.m. They end at 8, 9 p.m. But even kids in the West, young kids, like is my son going to stay up till 8:30 or 9 to watch like an NBA Finals game or like the NCAA championship game of March Madness? Maybe not. But in the East, it's like, again, you got to think about those that are going to be the next generation of your fans. And the fact that everything airs so late, like we're not that far removed from Major League Baseball having World Series games during the day, or at least championship series games during the day. Like, is it that crazy of an idea to have a Western Conference Finals or Eastern Conference Finals game on a Saturday at 3:30 Eastern as opposed to 8:30 Eastern? Like, I just think you have to be careful. Everything is catered towards the TV dollar. They get so much money from television, and then television wants to put these on in these primetime windows. I would just be careful not to like turn away from the next NBA fan or the next MLB fan by airing everything so darn late in the evening, even on Saturdays and Sundays. I mean, the NFL doesn't air everything at night, and that they've somehow figured it out. So not that anyone has asked me, but my 2 cents. All right, Alan Slee was going to join us coming up at 5:30. His thoughts on this NBA postseason, the Padres, Aztecs basketball as well. Plus Brent's back page is ahead here until 6. This is Jon and Jim on San Diego Sports 760 and live on the iHeartRadio app. All right, Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760. Alan Sliwa, Hoops Talk with Alan Sliwa on YouTube will join us at 5:30. Much more on this NBA postseason. One of the two teams for the NBA Finals is set. Plus, we'll talk Padres and Aztecs hoops coming up with Alan at 5:30. Then we do have Brent's Back Page coming up later this hour as well. Knicks and Pacers are underway tonight at the Garden. A must-win, obviously, for the Knicks, trailing 3-1. And midway through the first quarter, the Knicks do have an early 12-9 lead.
And Carl Anthony.
Why can I not hear you?
Because I'm pulling a Jim and I have my microphone on. And Carl Anthony Towns is playing, so he was a game time decision. They weren't sure if he's going to go with his knee, but he is out there right now. So.
All right. So we mentioned this earlier in the show as well, that with Oklahoma City winning yesterday, and if this series does come to an end tonight, it's an if, then there will be 7 days off in the NBA postseason. And what's interesting about that is we've talked extensively over the last 6 weeks about how these players have been run into the ground, playing every other day with very rare exception to that, where teams have played like 12 games in 23 days or whatever, or 12 games in 24 days. Both of these teams will have a complete reset. If the Pacers win tonight, they'll have a complete reset before game one of the NBA Finals, which is a week from tonight. It will be in Oklahoma City. Now, consider this. The Thunder have never won a title. Seattle, and again, they came from Seattle. Seattle has won in the 70s. The Pacers have never won. They won an ABA title in the 1970s. But we might have a matchup of two teams that have never won an NBA title, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. So is it compelling? Is it going to draw the most eyeballs in the history of the NBA postseason or finals? Absolutely not. Could it make for good television? Is it putting some players on display that we don't typically see, as we talked about earlier? You don't always see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You have over the last couple of weeks. You don't always see Tyrese Halliburton. You have over the last couple of weeks. I don't think that's a bad thing for the NBA, Brent, even if the ratings dip a little bit.
Well, that's one of the things, too, where I think people these days, they equate quality with ratings too much, to where, you know, in their minds, there's some people that they're of the opinion of, oh, well, it doesn't matter if it was a 105, 103 game and it was, 16 lead changes and 17 ties and all that, because, only 8 million people watched it. 30 million people turn in for Jaguars Steelers on a Thursday night. So that just means it's awful, to where it's like, they did that when the Bucks and the Suns played in their final series, and a majority of those games are close, good competitive games. But if you talk to some of these people, you'd think that they were all 40-point blowouts and is just not worth watching. And they do the same thing with movies these days too, to where it's like, oh, well, it didn't make $1 billion in the box office, so that means it's bad.
Right. It's exactly.
Like, well, no, only if you equate success with money or
right.
Like
if it's solely transactional, it's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. That isn't the only factor. Maybe it's a factor, but it's not the only factor. By the way, again, on tomorrow's show, we will have a really good lineup. Kevin's going to join us, our Padres insider. We'll get ready for Padres Pirates game 1. By the way, if you're curious, they were talking about on Fletchstone, right? Livy Dunn is in San Diego because obviously she's dating Paul Skeens, right? Were you talking about this with me earlier or not? I thought we were talking about this.
So it's like, are Fletch and Sammy like stalking her?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the only reason I know it is because they said it earlier today on the Fletchstone. I think they figured it out through like her social media, because Paul Skeens is celebrating his 23rd birthday today.
Oh.
So that would make sense that she would be in town. Plus, it's a Pirates off day, so they can spend time together.
Well, and he's not going to pitch.
And he's not going to pitch this weekend. Plus, she does a lot of business, I think, with Viore, which is a San Diego-based, leisure wear company. So I think she is in town as the Padres get ready for the Pirates. Again, Paul Skeens is in town. They're not going to face him this weekend, which I think after yesterday with the Padres losing in the manner in which they lost the Marlins, nobody wants to follow that up with Paul Skeens pitching Friday night down at Petco Park. If you missed it, Skeens yesterday in Arizona went 6 2/3 scoreless innings. So he's continued his really, really good year. He's such a, I don't think he's polarizing, but the idea of him is polarizing. And let me explain. It's because you've got this top flight player on a team that has never spent a dime. And the question is like, what do you do with him? And is he at some point, he's such a young player. He turned 23 today. He hasn't spent 2 years in the big leagues. He's only spent just over a year because they called him up early last year. But at what point does this point exist? Is he going to put his foot down at some point and be like, I got to get out of here? And it's not going to be now. This is year 2. He's controllable for 6 years. And we've seen players leave, like Juan Soto as a young player. That was in their 4th year. He was a 4th-year player in the major leagues. He still had 2.5 years of control when he eventually forced his way out of Washington when the Nationals knew they wouldn't sign him. When does that happen with Skeens? It feels inevitable. Does it happen sooner than Soto? As in, does it happen in year 3? Could he possibly be on his way out of Pittsburgh as soon as next year? Is it inevitable by the year after? I'm talking about 2027. That would be the same age or tenure in the major leagues as Juan Soto. Because one thing seems almost like a guarantee. He can't stay. They never spend. And if they did, would they be able to win if they spent so much money on Paul Skeens? They can't even win right now, and they're not spending anything on him.
I almost wonder if they're going to have some sort of like an arrangement with Skeens to where, like, just stick around. We have money to spend. If we want to spend it, because we don't spend any money. So, just stick around. We're going to, actually spend some money because we don't want you to leave. And if our choices are you leave and we do nothing, or we actually sign some players to build around you and get some butts in the seats, then maybe he'll be more prone to stick around. I kind of tend to think that the media is going to be more on the he wants out train more than he is, because he seems kind of quiet. He's not like one of these guys where they bumped me for my last start. Now I'm gonna whine about it in the press and everything. He just kind of he seems like he's not a rock the boat type of a dude.
I say bring him home. He started his college career at Air Force in the Mountain West. He's pitched at San Diego State. I say bring him home. Although what's realistic is, A, he's going to command a ridiculous dollar figure at some point, and B, the Pirates are. As much speculation as there is about his future, I know this. No second-year player with 4.5 years of control is going anywhere at this point. Even Paul Skeens on this, dreaded Pirates team.
We'll trade him straight up for Wadey.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Alan Sliwa on the other side. Brent's back. Page still ahead. Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760, live on the iHeartRadio app.